Okay, good morning again. Uh, the first thing I'm supposed to tell you is we are doing a videotape. So if you do not want to be videotaped, uh, please let us know for whatever reasons. I should probably not be videotaped for a lot of reasons, but they're forcing me to do it anyway. But just for your information, the tape will be from the back, so it will basically be the back of yourself. My name is Brenda Hopper. I'm the state director of the New Jersey Small Business Development Centers. The SBDC program, or our new logo, America's SBDC, is about assisting and helping small business owners. We have 12 regional centers here in New Jersey, and in any one year, we assist 20,000 small business owners. We help facilitate financing of 60 million in 2013, and we do all kinds of things: basic business planning, strategic planning, marketing. But then we do some specialty things, such as this program today. We have specialty services in international trade, in technology, government procurement, e-commerce, green initiative, and then today our resilience program. Most of you know that this is the second anniversary of Superstorm Sandy. And I'm sure we can all remember where we were. I think it hit New Jersey around 8 p.m. in South Jersey. And it was unbelievable tragedy and destruction and all those things that we just couldn't even imagine would happen, especially here in New Jersey. I've lived here for years and years and years, and I don't remember anything. We've had Irene, we had some other storms, but Superstorm Sandy, was really unbelievable. But certainly out of that tragedy, there was rebuilding. And finally, we're at the point now of resilience. And that's what this program is about today, resilience. That we will be prepared for any future disasters. And we will definitely have more disasters. The more prepared we are, then the better we can deal with them. I do remember I live in northern New Jersey, and I wasn't even hit that bad. I mean, my lights went out, and it was funny. You just didn't know what to do. I remember looking out the window and calling my neighbor, like, are you okay? What's going on? And as we looked around the neighborhood, all the lights were out. So we suffered about 1 week of no electricity. And I was one of the lucky ones because I have a gas stove. And so the neighbors would come to my house. We would just kind of stay warm. And I could make the tea and the soup and all that good stuff. But it just brought a togetherness that I didn't realize we could do. We became stronger as a neighborhood. Little did I know how bad it was in other areas of New Jersey. The destruction, the homes, and certainly the lives that were lost. So this resilience program is very, very important to New Jersey and to our country. New Jersey received a 2-year Superstorm Sandy grant, and that grant allowed us to put on programs such as this today. It allowed us, and Jackie Fuertes is our regional director at the Brookdale SBDC And Jackie was boots on the ground. She was walking the streets trying to make sure that people knew that the SBDC, the SBA, other resource partners, SCORE, SBA, all of us, we were out there trying to assist. So it's, you look back at the 2 years and we've come a long way, but as you may be well aware, we have a long, long way to go. And there are still places that have not rebuilt. There are still small businesses that have not reopened. And so that, on top of 2008 recession, it's been really, really tough for small businesses. I think today's program, hopefully you can stay for the entire program. You will take advantage of the expertise. You'll take advantage of the knowledge here. And even more so, please give us the feedback that this is what you want, or how we can make it better, or how we can tweak it so that we can provide the services to you that will be required. Now, I certainly have to put my glasses on now because Roy gave me notes and he wanted to make sure that, and I do a lot better just talking, but I'm going to listen to my boss. I'm going to read my notes here. Of course, we want to thank our sponsors. You taught me well, Roy. We want to thank our sponsors for everything they've done. And did I move this? New Jersey Natural Gas, US DOE, and Travelers Insurance, Comcast, and of course our resource partner, SCORE, for their support of this initiative. Ben Waldron, the Executive Director of the Monmouth Ocean Development Council, we certainly want to thank him, and of course Jacqueline, for bringing this program to Monmouth County. I'd also like to recognize the U.S. Resilience Project team, Debbie Van Opstel and Bill Buher. And they work very closely with a colleague of the SBDC. And I'd like for Bill, and I don't know if Debbie's here, but Bill, oh, there you are. Hi, Debbie. And Roy, if you could just stand up. They really worked hard to pull this project together. They did one in September in northern New Jersey, and now we thought that we would just try to take the show on the road. I can't say enough about Roy Lee. He is certainly a colleague, but Roy's a friend. And Roy's actually retired. And when we had this issue with Sandy, and when we got the funding to do Sandy, I called on my friend Roy. And I was like, Roy, I need you to help manage this project. And he came kicking and screaming. And so, Roy, I want to personally and publicly thank you, Debbie, and Bill for this wonderful program. Now, I understand that the program today is in two areas. Nat Forbes, who is an internationally known expert in disaster resilience and business continuity, will talk about the competitive advantages of resilience. And then we'll have Tony McDonald, who leads a critically important program for the region on climate change, and talk about community impact and what we need to do. Nat will take us through a tabletop exercise, and then later we'll hear from the critical infrastructure providers. Over lunch this afternoon, Nat will lead us through a second interactive exercise, and then we'll wrap up. But again, please don't forget to write your comments. I mean, we need to know if we are doing the right thing. We need to know that we're providing the right information. So I'm so happy to be here. In fact, Roy will take me to lunch all week because I got up at 5 o'clock to get down here from northern New Jersey. So, get your wallet out, Roy. And all those nice things I said about you, you gotta, okay, all right. So now I'd like to bring Ben on. His bio is in the packet. I won't read it. I'm going to let Ben tell you because he knows himself better than me, and he can introduce that in his remarks. And Roy even told me how to do this. But oh, yes, okay. Thank you so much and welcome, and please take advantage of today's program. Thank you.
I'm going to try to squeak out a little bit so that you know who I am and why I'm here and what our organization is about. And then I'm going to turn it over to my good friend Jacqueline, who's went through and crossed out on the scripts everything where it said Ben Waldron and inserted her own name on there. Again, I appreciate you joining us here this morning. As Brenda said, we've got a lot of information that we want to cover, and we have a lot of information that we want to extract from the group here today. It's going to be very important for us to know what we need to do, both from their perspective as the small business development centers in providing services, recovery services, and things of that nature going forward. But from my perspective, from my organization, we also do a lot of educational forums and training and seminars and conferences throughout the course of the year. In fact, we did a post-Sandy event very similar to this about a year ago here at Woodlake Country Club. So we want to know what your needs are from my organization's perspective so that we can continue to provide you with the kinds of training forums and educational forums that you're going to need to conduct your business and to make your business grow. So with that, I'm going to leave it to the rest of the people that have a voice here this morning to continue on. I will be here throughout the course of the day. I'm probably have to pick up some other responsibilities like cleaning up coffee cups off the table and so forth. But I'd like to turn it over to Jacqueline to moderate our program. Jack?
Thank you, Ben.
Okay, as Ben said, since he has no voice and I had to scratch out his name and put my own name, I will be reading a lot and I apologize for that. But one of the key goals for today is to demonstrate the prosperity, how it's linked to preparedness. So if you take nothing away from you from this resilience event, it's the competitiveness and the growth opportunity. And it's not just the loss avoidance issue. So when you're thinking of resilience, that's what I would like you to think about. Second, resilience is not a mysterious human quality that you either have or you don't have. It's all about best practices. So here we'll be talking about best practices as well as partnerships that can be created. And those best practices don't have to be invented or require massive investments. They just have to be shared, deployed, and many are hiding right in plain sight. So some of the things. Finally, the lack of resilience affects the competitiveness of the whole community and all of its companies and citizens. What isn't always well recognized are the codependencies, which is true. When you look at large businesses, they depend on small businesses, which are often critical to their supply chain. So think, if the small businesses are not there to be able to supply it to the bigger businesses, that does cause a problem. So small businesses are also the linchpin for two of our biggest sectors, tourism and retail. All of us depend on the resilience of our critical infrastructure, the power, data, and telecommunication transportation. So the bottom line here today is that together and how well we work together will determine how well we will succeed in our community. So now it's my responsibility and my great pleasure to kick off the first session of our program. One of the things that I do want to share with you, and I may be out of sync here, is on your tables you have these, and we are going to be taking polls, and they're instant. On one screen you're going to see questions, and once you answer it, it's going to go straight. It's wireless, so the information is instantaneously. Talk about interactivity, we're there. Think about that. So, make sure you have one in front of you so you could do the voting when it's time. So now, we called it Setting the Stage, but you may want to think about it as the new landscape of opportunity and risk in the 21st century. How will those trends impact your business strategy? So our first speaker will be Nat Forbes. Nat has lived for most of the past 2 decades in Singapore, where he managed Forbes climatic, I can't even speak, excuse me, climatity, still not coming out right. Thank you. It's just not coming out right. Prevention, providing business continuity, crisis, emergency management, planning, advisory services for multinational companies in Asia and in Europe. Nat was a president of the Asia Council of the International Association of Disaster Managers for Asia. He is an author, internationally known speaker, and trainer. And then closer to home, at Monmouth University, we will hear from Tony McDonald, who runs the Urban Coast Institute, which will help us understand how climate change is impacting our region and how we can adapt to those changes. He brings a wealth of experience to the position, having served as the executive director of the Coastal States Organization and the special counsel and director of environmental affairs at the American Association of Port Authority. There are very distinguished biographies in your packets. We will take questions after both have finished speaking. So, we're gonna get started by taking a quick snap poll, and that's thanks to Travelers Insurance. You have your voting pads, which I described earlier, and we're going to ask some yes and no questions, and you should key in your answer. We will get the results from the group in real time. So let me bring Nat up to the stage to get started. Nat, thank you.
Are you going to ask the questions, or?
No, I think you
No,
are.
you're-
Or do
okay,
you
no,
need
no,
me to ask the questions?
no,
I can
no,
do
no,
it.
no, no.
I have it on paper.
Look,
Not a problem.
I brought a jacket. They told me it was business casual, and I walk in and Ben's got on pinstripes. So I have lived on the equator for 20 years, and we can tell the tourists by the ones who are putting jackets on in 90 degrees and 90% humidity. So I'm a lot more comfortable. I hope you'll let me dress like this to address you today. I just want to find out, to start with, just what opinions we have in the room. So, Seth, give us the first question. Do you personally believe that your climate is changing? Not the climate, your climate where you live. And I was going to make it just a yes or no question, but then I thought there might be some of you who, well, I'm not really sure. So on your keypad, would you please press 1, 2, or 3, right? Any one of the top row, and let's see what we get. Okay, I see 34 of you have, you see where we are here? Up there at the top, 34 responses. Okay. 79% yes, is that correct? You got that right? Okay, I wanted to do this. You see, that 1 in 5 of you, there's about 5 of you at each table. So you can look at each other sort of suspiciously. There's somebody at your table who isn't sure why he or she is here, or that we're going to be, maybe we're selling snake oil here today, right? Right? 20%, right? Okay. The second question, Seth? Assuming that you believe that climate change is happening where you are, do you believe that human action is, at least in part, responsible for it? These questions are supposed to touch on controversial subjects anyway. We're getting to get everybody's biases out on the table right away. Do you believe that human behavior is a factor in changing climate? Yes, no, or maybe. Okay, got 34 responses. Fair enough. Seth? Okay, so 75, there you, now it's gone up. It was only 20% of you who weren't really sure. Now 25% of you aren't sure that the people in this room are at least in part responsible. That's okay. We're not going to make you identify yourselves right yet. All right? And lastly, the last question is, if you believe that the climate is changing, do you believe that you personally, that your actions can speed up or slow down that climate change? Do you believe that you personally have some responsibility or can contribute to speeding it up or slowing it down? Yes or no? Okay, I'm going to need the.
Here you go.
Where is it? Oh, there you go. Okay. Thank you. All right. 70%. Fair enough. Well, so now we're up to 30%, right? That don't think that they have any responsibility for it. That's okay. But my problem is here that if you don't think that you're contributing to it, I don't think that you can also think that you can do anything to slow it down. In which case, you may be in for a long nap today, because what we're going to talk about is doing something that you can do to protect yourself from it. All right? So I want you to understand that there are people in this room who are not sure that the climate is changing, that that humans are responsible in general, or that they personally have are making any contribution to it. That's okay with me. I have lived for 20 years in the region of the world that the United Nations says is the most disaster-prone region on the planet. If you have read your newspaper at any time in the last 20 years, you've heard a lot about a lot of disasters. I consider myself a resilience professional, someone who works on those kinds of issues professionally. And one of the things that I have done on 2 occasions in the last 5 years is go to New Orleans to volunteer to help rebuild a firehouse and to help rebuild a school. This picture was taken in March of this year in New Orleans. Whole areas of the lower Ninth Ward in New Orleans have been abandoned 5 years after Hurricane Katrina. Why they were abandoned, why the most powerful country in the world cannot rebuild one of America's most favorite tourist cities is not a subject for discussion here, but in general, my conclusion is that we in the United States have decided that it's okay to abandon some parts of our country as a result of a weather-related event. At the time that Hurricane Katrina happened, nobody was talking about climate change. It was just a freak storm. It's only in the last 5 years that you've started to hear, well, maybe this is going to happen more often. And the question that I asked in June of this year to a conference of 1,000 emergency managers in Toronto was, if we're willing to abandon New Orleans, what else are we willing to abandon? What other cities or areas of the country might we just give up on and say it's just too expensive? And to put it in perspective, I asked people, can you imagine being the emergency manager who makes the recommendation, we have to give up on parts of Las Vegas? Now, why would you have to give up on parts of Las Vegas? See the fountains? That's somebody's drinking water in Los Angeles, and it was just diverted to Las Vegas to make that fountain go. The use of water in Las Vegas and the West, I suppose you have read about the drought that they're having. It's completely unsustainable. That desert, if you didn't have water and electricity, that'd be desert that you're looking at. And in a couple of years, not too distant future, I believe that people in the West are going to be having the discussion, is it okay for Las Vegas to keep doing that? Do you know that it is already illegal to water your lawn in Las Vegas? You're not allowed to do it any time of the year. And then you think, well, geez, that sounds pretty sensible. And then you drive around, and what is one of the favorite recreational activities in Las Vegas besides gambling? Playing golf, right? Have a look at the golf courses. How do you think those things stay green, right? So I'm in the workshop today, I have chosen a scenario that's pretty much the opposite of drought, because I thought for those of you in New Jersey, the idea of thinking about a drought in New Jersey would be a bit more difficult than thinking about sea level rise. I live on an island too. I live on an island that's only 45 kilometers, 30 miles across. You can drive across the entire country in about 20 minutes. So for me, the idea of sea level rise is visceral, right? We're not messing around. We're not taking our chances. We're building up the seawalls, and people are getting hip boots and taking swimming lessons, right? It seems to me that the big problem we have, there are a couple of big problems that I think we have in planning for climate change, and we're going to address one of them today. First of all, I don't think any action by any of us in this room is going to stop climate change. It's already too late. The stuff that's in the atmosphere that's causing the volatility in the weather, that was spewed out there a long time ago. And what's being spewed out today will have effects way far in the future, and any changes that you make today will not have any beneficial effect for some years in the future. If you will, it's already too late. It's going to happen. Right? So it's not a question. There's no issue of likelihood in my view. It's darn likely. In fact, it's a certainty. We don't know the degree. Yeah, we don't know how much, and we don't know how it'll affect you personally. Second, I'm pretty sure that governments are not going to be there to help us. And it's not because governments are bad or incompetent, it's because the scale with which they have to deal is simply beyond the capability of every government on the planet. This is true for an earthquake in China. It was true for the Philippine government after Typhoon Haiyan earlier this year. This is a picture from Haiyan. Right? Governments are overwhelmed. I am a member of the International Association of Emergency Managers. That's 40,000 emergency managers from the counties in the United States. They're always overwhelmed. They don't have the resources. So if we ourselves are not prepared to take care of ourselves, and you know the story about having 72 hours worth of supplies to take care of it, that's not wishful thinking. The people who are telling you that know that they are not going to be able to help you, and they're telling you as clearly as you can. So if you want, as a business person, to be ready, you have to at least be thinking about, well, what can I do for myself? But the hardest problem that I have, and that the people in resilience professions have, is there's no commercial incentive for people to prepare. You hear, oh, you should have water, you should have 72 hours of supplies, you should have some drinking water in your house, you should have a flashlight and batteries and a radio. Yes, and you should also not eat at McDonald's, you should not eat the McDonald's French fries, and you ought to exercise, right? And you ought to drink more water. There's a lot of things that you ought to do in your life that you don't do. And my contention after 20 years of trying to help people plan is that the reason they don't do it is that there's no benefit in doing so. The benefit only comes, the cost benefit analysis is the only time I'm going to benefit from making these preparations is if we have a disaster. And the human brain is wired to assume that that's not going to happen. If you thought there were going to be a disaster today, you would have stayed home, right? You would have stayed under the covers and just prayed for the best, right? We make the assumption when we get up in the morning, no, it's all going to be fine. Let me tell you a story that changed my thinking about this benefit stuff. Okay? So, where I live, have any of you been to Singapore ever? There you go. Did anybody take, good for you, did anybody take you to BrewWorks? You did. Look, what are the odds, right? Out of 40 people in a room in New Jersey, right? Okay, so I picked the right one. So BrewWorks was our first, and it still is, the largest microbrewery in Singapore. Run by an American, pretty good beer. They claim that they're the largest single dining location. They serve more people in one location than any other establishment in Singapore. And it's a pretty common to take Westerners to come to visit so that because when they look at the menu of the Chinese stuff, they say, take me for a hamburger, right? Right? So we do. So they're a client. I'm going to tell you their story is that the owner came to me about 10 years ago. And after 9/11, and they, perhaps like many of you, were concerned about terror. And they had some guys out in front with cameras that they had taken pictures of the place that they thought were kind of suspicious. And they didn't have, like almost every restaurant that I'm aware of, they didn't have a business continuity plan. Could you help us? Oh, yeah, sure. So we start helping them. And in the middle of helping them, SARS came along. Now, does everybody, you know what I'm talking about? SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome. Okay, so in Singapore, we've had 3 epidemics in the last 10 years. SARS was the first one, the 2003, very scary. And what happened in a restaurant, what happened in SARS, what do you think happened in a restaurant when SARS was going around. Business went in the toilet, right? So here's a picture of the people at Brewworks, right? These are the kind of people who go, like my friend here, right? There you are, right? Visiting, maybe with the kids or whoever took you to the, right? The business fell off the table. So the guy comes to me and says, well, this planning that we're doing for terror, will it also work for disease? And I mean, sure, it works for anything, right? Different impact, different steps that we would take. So we start thinking about it. And as it turns out, if one of the things that we start looking at, what's on the menu, what are we not going to be able to get or serve as a result of infectious disease? What happens if one of our guests gets sick on the property? Will we know that? How do we protect the staff? Right? Now, let's see if I can quickly get you into the mindset for today. Your job right now is what would you advise a restaurant where the people won't come to your restaurant because they're scared of getting sick? How would you make them more resilient? You have one choice. I will give you the answer, but I want to see how you do it. What advice would you give them? Something they could do to change their business, to make their business more resilient. Sorry? Gotta be loud because I'm takeout. Takeout, very good. And after that, what's the next one?
Delivery.
Sorry?
Delivery.
Delivery. Thank you very much. Right. So I said to the owner, have you ever thought about home delivery? And he, no. And as it turns out, it is legal in Singapore to deliver beer to the home, right? And they got a guy running around on a little scooter, bringing what you call them growlers here, I think, right? Kind of a small tub, right? And that's a good idea. They already had a website, so they already listed what was on the menu. They needed to get someone to program, okay, I want to order 3 of those and 4 of those and 16 hamburgers and add French fries, right? But the idea was he changed his business because it was a good business idea that also had the side benefit of making him more resilient. He didn't do it because he was doing disaster planning, because I told him 14 things he ought to do for disaster planning that he said no to, right? But he said, even if we never get SARS again, and then of course we had bird flu and then we had swine flu, so I was a genius for having suggested this to him. He made a change in his business that gave him a competitive advantage. Nobody else in town none of the other Western restaurants in town were offering home delivery service. So the idea was it a good business idea that also happened to have the benefit of, well, if the building burns down or we have a typhoon, by the way, bad weather is not allowed in Singapore. It's punishable. We don't have that. Everybody told me that for 20 years. It also had the side benefit of making them more resilient in the face of disaster, which they didn't have. But they didn't do it because it was a good disaster idea. They did it because it was a good business idea. Right? Okay, so I said, well, I hope is that the only idea? And would I be suggesting to you today that you have to make that kind of significant change in your business in order to be more resilient? And unfortunately, last year in preparing for another presentation, I found out about Walmart. So Walmart is one of the best prepared retailers in the United States. I suppose you know that. Why are they well prepared? Because baby, when your house burns down or tips over in a storm, they want to be there to sell you tents and tarpaulins and lumber and nails and bottled water and all that other stuff, right? They want to be able to take advantage of commercial advantage of adversity. Now, they don't run around and put that on TV, but that's their business, right? The reason they move extra lumber into the store in the eye of the storm is that they expect to sell that lumber. And they expect to be open to be able to do that, right? So they have a commercial reason for wanting to be prepared. And so they, of course, what they found out was one of the brains in Arkansas was in the IT department, was doing what they call data mining, right? Now, what happens when disasters hit our stores? And because they have so many of them, they have quite a lot of data. And what did they discover? They discovered that there was a very inexpensive, very popular item, sales of which went through the roof every time they have a disaster and people came to their store? What was that item? Any idea? Sorry? Flashlights.
Batteries.
Sorry?
Batteries.
Batteries.
Water.
Nah. Pop-Tarts. Contains two of the key ingredients of life, sugar and preservatives. Right? And so what they have, check it out. I hope you don't have another storm so that you don't have to go find this out. But the idea here is now they ship in cartons of Pop-Tarts. Why? You can eat them raw. You can feed them to the kids. If you happen to have heat or you have the oven of a next door neighbor, right, then you can heat them up and you can eat them warm. But they will keep you going, right? And they are inexpensive. Here is an idea. You do not have to change your business to invent home delivery. You don't have to make it quite that radical. A small insight gives you an opportunity to take commercial advantage. They could sell more Pop-Tarts than the other guys. So this morning and this afternoon, I'm going to take you through I'm going to try to teach you about planning for climate change in 3 hours. It's a Herculean task. I need your cooperation, but I hope that you will approach this with, can I get some advantage from being prepared that the other guy who's not prepared won't get? Thank you.
That was great. I think it's a little unfair to put me after a efficiency expert from Singapore. I mean, I actually spit out some gum on the way in here, and I think I might have been arrested if I was in Singapore. So excuse me. But this is great, and I think actually the credit to the organizers of this and Jacqueline to really get to best practices, because I think really that's the scale at which I think most businesses and local communities really can focus their attention. There's just so much information out there and so many good information. I actually, fortunately, one of the advantages at being at a university is I actually was at a lecture last week from Ann Reed from the National Centers for Science and Education about climate denial and what goes into climate denial and why folks like science only to a point. And usually the reasons they tend to be skeptical about the science have to do with certain levels of self-interest. Money, also faith and personal belief sometimes can be at least lead them to question some of the science and information. And thinking about where you fit into that framework and what your questions are, and figuring out whether there are assets or there are places you can find answers to those questions, I think is really something to think about in a broader sense after this workshop. And I have a couple of questions. I don't have the technology, but I do have a couple of questions to sort of set up my remarks. And I also have much too much information, so I apologize. I'm going to be running through some of this quickly so you get back on track. And I'm sure that the organizers will make the presentation available if you want to look at some of the detail. But I have a couple of quick questions. One of you, how many in this room actually in some way were impacted by Sandy and therefore had to deal with FEMA or any of the recovery processes after Sandy? Okay, so it looks like a little bit more than half of the folks. How many folks actually are aware of or even more so involved with the development of the county or local hazard mitigation plan? Okay, it's going down. How many of you are aware or in some way involved with your town plan and know how your municipal land use plan includes sea level rise or flooding into the land use plan and zoning requirements? Okay, even fewer. Again, I think I want to make a general point here because I have so much information. The students all want me to give me the answers before they actually give them the information. So one of the answers really is I want you to be thinking very much about scale and thinking about resilience in a broader sense other than recovery from a storm. There are scientific definitions. There is a lot of literature on what resilience is about, and it is partially about recovering from storms. But it is a much broader concept, and I think the things you need to think about is where you fit in, not only for the focus of this workshop, which is really on business readiness and the business case and the best practices for resilience in the context specifically of storms, but more broadly over scale and time frame. Where do you fit in with your community? Where do you fit in with the other small businesses? How do you work with them? How do you work with the county and the governmental processes? Certainly a challenge, and one of the things that I have come out at the Urban Coast Institute, and you'll hear about some of the work we're doing, is recognizing how one of the main challenges, I think, is integrating the governmental and the community planning with the business planning. I think that is something that is fundamentally missing in the planning aspects of resilience as well as in the financing aspects. Really, I'll talk a little bit about the trend of the recovery of the federal and state roles in recovering from storms and how that is not really on a good trend line. In addition, I think the issue really is I have my personal question for you all in the room that I'm sorry, can't participate in the workshop, would like answered, but how do we make this business case for you all to actually get the investment, not only after and during a storm, but on an ongoing basis, because change is going to be difficult, it's going to be ongoing and long-term, and it's not a question of some fixes. You can do some fixes, you can be stronger, you can have readiness plans, but over time, you have to be thinking about more things. So that's the answer. Think about scale, think about time. Be disciplined about when you're talking about resilience. Are you talking about it just in the personal sense that Jacqueline was referring to, or are you actually looking at it in a process or planning framework? So if this works. So again, I'm sort of coming here today. Some of this is very simple, so that's the other thing. I mean, just don't make dumb decisions, okay? So, do look at the science. Don't build in floodplains. What are the rules? What are the building standards? There is information available to the community that you can find, I'm sure, through Jacqueline's organization or for the U.S. Resilience. So don't make dumb decisions. Sometimes you can simplify it. I'm going to talk, as I said, about 3 sort of different scopes. I'm going to sort of mention this quickly to hopefully get you back on scale. I'm sorry, I'm really now like, I want to say so much, so I apologize. But we're going to talk a little bit about the concept of risk. I think that's fundamentally something that's an aspect, risk and cost benefit was an aspect in community planning and resilience planning that isn't well understood. So we don't really know, what do the floodplain maps protect us against? What does that say? It's really an insurance thing. It's not necessarily a protection thing. What are the sea level rise and climate change information? How does that relate to our risk, either in the short or long term? How do we think about risk? How much is our beach projects? I'll talk about something I'm working on. Do they really protect the community? Do we know that? Do most people know about that? So how do we manage, buy down, and identify how do we invest in risk protection at the individual, community, and state scale? Adaptation is another issue. I'm going to talk a little bit about adaptation as well. So in my mind, a little simply, I think of sort of a nested process of recovery, resilience, and adaptation. They all have aspects in common, but adaptation in some ways is a longer scale relation to longer term problems that maybe aren't in your or a local elected official's 4-year plan or your business plan for now, but you need to be aware of, and that's where climate comes into the equation a little bit, or at least you need to be aware of it. Even be aware of it and say, no, I just can't do that. But please know about it and make a concrete, specific decision about what you are or not doing with relation to these issues. And finally, I'll talk about some community resilience work that we're doing, and then hopefully a follow-up workshop that we'll organize with you all is bridging some of the resilience work we're doing with local communities with some of the resilience work that this group is doing with small businesses, because I think that's a real outcome. So the reality is, from a financial point, billion-dollar storms are a fact of life. World is changing. That 30% that doesn't really believe in climate change, that's fine. Believe the historical trend and the scientific framework that billion-dollar storms are a fact of life. And that is true. And in New Jersey, we don't have to think about that as often. It's not only the big storm. It's also the nuisance flooding in your community. Huge, increasingly recognizing more flooding that doesn't go away in the community. We have the nor'easters. Sandy was a unique and incredible storm, but it didn't have a lot of rain. Most of our storms have a lot of rain, so back bay flooding. If you don't happen to be, get all the attention of being right on the beach, that's what we talk about. We have communities that, and increasingly developing communities in the back bay areas that are increasingly at risk. Again, fundamental point, most resilience planning, most hazard planning, most funding for those things is backward looking. It's looking at what happened and how do we get back to where we already are. Again, I'm going to urge a definition for resilience, which isn't bouncing back to where we are, but bouncing forward to something that includes broader concepts of resilience and adaptation over time. Again, change is here. It's not something, again, you can debate the climate issues, you can debate the science. I'm happy to have that discussion, but the reality is change is here, and how do we deal with it, and at what scale? Again, so I want to talk a little bit about managing risk. I'll tell you some general principles. Who pays? Again, that's a big issue. Sorry, that's just a big issue. Sometimes people don't want to talk about that in the public policy arena, where I sort of fit in a lot. So, people don't want to talk about it. It's almost like, well, don't worry about that, retreat. I'm like, no, you can't say that. That is not a solution for a marina. A marina can't retreat. You know, it's not a solution for a community right now. So how do you think about buying down risk? What are your time scales? What is the scale of the project as well? Again, that's a challenge, I think, for the business community, particularly small businesses, because people don't really think of them as a group, and they really can get lost. We see communities in recovery of storms getting lost. It's the small business community, and it's the disadvantaged communities. Those communities get lost in recovery. There's not the processes, they don't have the skills, they don't have the technology, they don't have the information, and they tend not to have an advocate as well, even in addition to this advocate, but they meet a louder voice, I think. But most of the recovery things from Katrina and others say those are the communities that get lost. So they need extra attention up front and over time to do that. So I did work on a panel for the National Academy of Science where the Corps of Engineers asked us, mostly in the context of beach projects and their other shore protection projects, to look at how they manage risk. And it was kind of scary because they don't manage it consistently. New Orleans is very different from New Jersey, which is very different from other areas. We have a lot of environmental and other concerns that sort of lead us to disinvest in some harder structures. So how do we start looking about this? So generally, this is our charge. We looked at how do we help them think more consistently about coastal risk reductions and what are their main challenges in having a consistent, transparent, and clear risk strategy for their investments. Again, hopefully some of these lessons are transferable to other communities and other agencies thinking about risk. And the reality is there's a couple things. Again, this is the problem, all you're looking for FEMA. Who's in charge? I mean, there are many, many agencies involved in resilience, and sometimes they're not the most obvious ones. The emergency management planners have a lot of expertise on emergency management, but they're the ones not investing in your roads. They're not investing in utility infrastructures. They're not investing in those things that actually you need as small businesses. So you do need to be very aware of this incredibly complicated equation. You also need to recognize, and this is the funding thing that was alluded to by the previous speaker, that the vast majority of funding for coastal risk-related issues is only provided after the disaster occurs, not a framework for thinking about resilience or adaptation in a comprehensive or ongoing fashion, and that is very problematic. We don't have. This is again, you know, if we're taking the exam, I'd say you need to remember this clause and you need to be able to explain to me how we answer this, which is we really have a misalignment of risks, rewards, resources, and responsibilities. So we have a real dislocation in the resilience world, so that we have disincentives or incentives in flood insurance that might actually have people stay and restore in the places that maybe they shouldn't. We don't have pro-incentives for businesses to be thinking about how they think long-term about moving or changing or altering their business enterprise in ways that will be more resilient. So we really have a misalignment of these risk, rewards, resources, and responsibilities that result in two things from my public policy brain. One is inefficiencies, and the other thing is constituencies that want to defend the status quo. That's the issue. There's a lot of groups that really want to defend the status quo, and that's very difficult to overcome in public policy framework, and it's only going to happen if communities get together like this and come up with their priorities. So really, I urge you to really think about what you need. The more you can put in front of people saying this is what we need as a community, the more chance you're going to have success, because after the case, you're going to get lost. You risk getting lost in the melee. So really, we do need to be thinking about the hazard side and the consequence side. How are you increasing your vulnerability, and what is the nature of the hazard? So it's not only about the storm, but you probably can have more control over the vulnerability and consequence size. So don't sweat the stuff you can't control, but do sweat the stuff you do have some impact put into. Again, there's some very specific things that you can do around building standards and everything that is improving. The requirements aren't as high as they could be in New Jersey as are in other states, but there are some very specific best practices, I think, that you can be looking to. That also came up in this context. So I think guiding investments, I think we need to be thinking about both risk standards and cost benefit. We are in a cost benefit world. You are, as business owners, trying to figure out what you can invest in at the state and federal scale. We're also talking about cost benefit. We have a limited budget. That's going to push that. So we do need to be thinking increasingly about acceptable risk and transparency about what we are exposed to as communities in the risk thing. Again, these are some more specific, and I just really don't have time to go into them, but there's some federal regulations that really are creating some of these disincentives. As I said, you have a lot of self-interest, you have a lot of constituencies and status quo that are looking at that. So really, we called for a couple of things. This is really sometimes not, the simple answers are sometimes the best. We need a national vision for coastal risk management that crosses those agencies, so you're getting a consistent message. You need the federal government to work with the states to develop an assessment New Jersey, we have the authority to develop a state shore protection plan. State hasn't done it for 20 years. Some communities, I will be honest, are a little nervous about doing that because what it's going to say. Because it might say something that they think will be a disincentive for businesses coming in. Very legitimate concern, but a little problematic if we recognize what is in fact happening. So how do we enable that as opposed to create folks, push people into a denial of circumstance? So we need these stronger incentives. I mean, very much look at the incentive side of the equation to improve pre-disaster risk mitigation. I mean, I think that's really a little bit what this workshop is about. I think really think about those things you can have control over, but that's very important at the state scale and the federal scale as well. So that's sort of just a general sense of some principles that really we were looking at the Corps of Engineers program specifically in New Jersey and in the East Coast, but I think some of those principles relate, and I'm here to provide context, so hopefully that's something for you to think about and hopefully will be constructive. I'm now going to talk a little bit about the Climate Adaptation Alliance. So I'm on the advisory committee and involved with a group that's coordinated out of Rutgers. We really are trying to get groups to be thinking more consistently about climate adaptation, as I said, over scale. If we know certain things are happening, what are the incentives and disincentives in New Jersey for us taking action? Some of them can be in the policy side, some of them can be in the funding side, some of them can be in the technical assistance side and the capacity building side. So we're looking at a variety of issues, and there are a whole bunch of groups involved in this. I mean, fortunately, a lot of folks much smarter than I and with a lot more technical expertise that we're bringing to the table to look at vulnerability and preparedness, and I'll tell you about some of the tools we're looking at. Really look at communications and education. This is an ongoing process. It's not a pre and post-storm process. This does need to be part of your business plan, and I don't really understand what a business plan is. I'm a lawyer who does public policy stuff, but I know that that's something that you need to think about. What is the business case for this? And we do need to facilitate these pilot and demo projects. So let's really push the good actors out front, give them the incentives, and so that. So again, Rutgers has done a lot of work. We can scale down some of these climate studies to really say that the climate is changing in New Jersey. And it's not only flooding. Heat is going to be a big issue that's going to impact tourism. It's going to impact industry. We have a lot other forcing factors that are coming out of the climate equation that we should not forget. So it's not only about storm and flooding. It's about heat. It's about changes in your ecosystems. Some people might rely on ecotourism, huge industry, bird watching, huge industry in New Jersey. It's not only people coming to the beach, the tourism industry. And there's some facts here, and there's a variety of studies that I'm sure anybody can share with you about the economic impacts of New Jersey of climate change. So those studies are available if you're not aware of them, and we can do more. I think they're sort of broad brush studies at this point. So again, we do need the businesses. We've sort of reached out. We're recognizing essentially groups like the Securities Exchange Commission are sort of saying these are material risks now. This is going to be big probably more for big corporations, but there is in the business community increasingly, and I'm sure your expert knows much more about this than I, a recognition that these are material risks that need to be thought of in a business sense. Local businesses are looking for much better coordination. Again, so this sort of does reflect what we talked about the core. Community preparedness processes offer opportunities for coordination. Again, we need more opportunities for small businesses, and we need to encourage them to get involved in some of these community preparedness and community planning exercises. These are sort of parallel universes to a large extent. So how do we create those highways for you to connect with them? Resilience efforts are limited by information availability, capital availability, administrative burden, and especially for small businesses. This seems like a new thing. It seems something in addition to your already busy schedule. So how do we enable you to make this part of what you already do as opposed to other duties as assigned, which you almost never, if you're like me, you never get to. You just don't, you know it's important, but it's hard to get to. So again, we also have seasonality issues and a lot of other issues that we need to be thinking about in small businesses. Again, I'm not going to run through these statistics, but there's quite a few statistics available out there, studies that have been done about the economic impacts from sea level rise at the community level. But where does this business community fit into that in the growth sense and in your individual business sector as well? Again, insurance is creating a lot of uncertainty, but insurance companies are increasingly leaders in this field. They are looking to develop new insurance products that are actually looking at these things differently. So we do need to be thinking about alternative products and how do we work with the insurance industry, shipping and transportation, but a bigger scale than we're talking about here. Tourism, probably much more relevant to some of these communities, if not directly, indirectly. So we do see a lot of challenges from a specific, so this is a story that needs addressing, and it needs addressing at the state level as well. We need a state program that looks at this and supports the tourism industry. And really, okay, but I think they're really kind of struggling with regard to that support. They think it sells itself. I'm not talking about just the marketing of it. I'm talking about giving you the tools that you need to incorporate resilience. So I'll conclude with just some general thoughts at the more local level about what we're doing. I didn't really do my paid political advertising for the Urban Coast Institute, but we've been at Monmouth for about 8 years now, and our job is actually to integrate some of the best science to engage key public policy questions around a variety of issues. And we have been in the resilience game actually before Sandy. So we have recognized that sea level rise flooding, living at the coast, presents a lot of challenges. So we look a lot at that. We look a lot at also coastal water quality, issues of the environmental health of estuaries. That's very important to the quality of life and the success of business. And we also look at issues having to do with ocean resource planning, everything from wind farms. So we have been in the resilience plan. And one thing that's really exciting that's, again, maybe a necessary or beneficial outcome from Sandy is we recognize that there are a lot of other folks working in this area, but we need a consistent message. That's the other thing. You can't keep giving communities and small businesses different messages. So we are working on a resilience network with a variety of other groups who are engaged in this. Rutgers, Jacques Cousteau NEARS, New Jersey Futures, Sustainable Jersey. We need to include the business community, so we'll partner maybe with Jacqueline moving forward. So we need to be thinking about this consistent framework to enable people to assess, plan, and more importantly, implement the best practices, again, actions. And we need to really get quickly to that because except for lawyers and planning policy wonks, a lot of business folks are not as patient with that side of the equation. So we need to help through that with the communities, but we need to think about that. So again, we've developed these tools, and there are all these tools available that really, again, I asked, my last question was how many people know what your communities are doing about planning for flooding and mapping and where you fit into that equation, in addition to how responsive will they be to your needs. So we are developing tools. Again, these are not saying you must do something. They're just information that should go into your equation, and then you think about the time and scale of the response once you get that information. So we have adapted this information not only for the flooding, we're sort of furthest in that, but we're now working with the Climate Adaptation Alliance to also put this other climate. We're moving on to heat and other information. So other climate-driven impacts that need to be considered over time for your community. And again, maybe you can't do that as a small community, but you better make sure that your local elected officials are paying attention to it, or else you're going to get caught short over time. And again, we've also linked this very much. So it's not just a map. We link the map with specific policies, plans, and getting to resilience. This, again, our target audience for this has been municipal officials, planning officials, emergency managers, and maybe some of you as local officials get involved in that. We need to be thinking probably a little bit more about how then we can deliver a similar tool for the business community, or at least incorporate some of their aspects if they're not within this getting to resilience framework. Again, what we're trying to do is make sense across all these plans. It's kind of a confusing alphabet soup of different plans that don't relate very well to each other. I want to say to you in the next meeting, you don't have to worry about this because we've developed a way for you to navigate through it based on your interests, not based on every specific plan. So that's sort of, if I'm going to come out of here as I'm thinking about this, that's what I'd like to do. So again, we're working in the community, at the community level, and we are really moving forward. And I think outcomes from workshops like this will be extremely instructive to us and other communities in deciding what kind of actions do we need to implement, what actions do we need to take at the local and state level. So I'll conclude with a couple of slides. This is kind of, climate scientists feel a little bit abused these days by that 30% in the poll that doesn't really believe it. So they really are trying to work hard to give you good science. But everybody's entitled to their skepticism. It makes it interesting. And on a note of hope, the reality is really what you're thinking about is a better future, not for your business, but for your community and the quality of life at the shore. So again, that was a lot of information quickly, and I apologize, but New York, New Jerseyers usually can listen pretty quickly too, so hopefully it wasn't too fast. Thank you.
Yes, don't go too far, Tony. Thank you, very good. Nathaniel, we're gonna open it up to questions. Does anyone have any questions for Nathaniel or Tony regarding what was discussed? You have a question all the way in the back?
Hi, I have a question. I am a staffing agency, and I found that small business kind of needed a guidance as far as their employees. You have some employees that weren't affected by Sandy, and some employees that had children at home, couldn't go to work, didn't have enough vacation days left, and some employers insisted you
think that's a statement question, but I mean, the reality is, make sure you capture that, because that's the kind of thing I think very much you can go. Again, I am not in the labor or the readiness focus program, but I do think guidance for businesses, if there isn't any available already, with regard to policies for enabling workers off-site, we're enabling that. I'm going to guess there's some issues, some programs like that out there, but I'll defer to my expert here on the right.
Well, I can tell you a lot about doing that in Asia, but I don't know a thing about doing it in New Jersey.
Can
In
I
my
chime in?
business,
Oh, I was just gonna say, putting together a continuity plan is part of it. It's actually doing that, addressing those issues, and if you're able to do them beforehand. I mean, we didn't know what was gonna happen with Sandy, but that's one of the services that our SBDC is looking to work on, especially moving forward, is addressing those questions, making sure that it's part of your continuity plan. So this way you know how to address those issues when they arise. Sorry, Nathaniel.
well, in my business, the questions you're asking are the subject of the presentations that people give at the conferences that I go to. What did we do? And I think what you're looking for is, what did someone else do, or what are other groups doing, or what do other companies like mine, or what have they done? That kind of advice is, in my judgment, widely available in the resilience profession sphere, which is why you don't hear about it, because that's not what you do. But if you give me your card, I'll give you my email address. I'll be happy to send you some places where you could look for that kind of information. I don't know if there's, why are you so concerned about what everybody else is doing?
I provide labor to small businesses. and
Yeah,
so
you're a
I-
contractor? I mean, you
I'm
contract
a
labor?
staffing agency.
Yeah, right.
So I know that there was some companies, whatever you need, stay home. Here
Yeah.
are other companies where we have no power, but you better be at your desk on time,
Yeah.
or you all have been friends. I just thought.
And
it's
you
worth
want to
it.
give them advice, or you want to point them to
And I-
advice?
Point them to advice,
Hmm.
just be a conduit for information.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I think Jacqueline's absolutely right, that you wouldn't have a business continuity plan without having had that discussion. We spent, in the last 20 years, I imagine I've spent days, if not weeks, on specifically that subject, not for storm events, but for disease events. As I indicated, we've had 3 epidemics, right? So, do I have to come to work? If I'm a sales guy, and I know that my prospect, the guy I'm calling on, that his company has had someone infected with SARS, and in Singapore, that's on the front page.
Right.
Do I have to go call them? What if I'm afraid about calling? When I ran an exercise with the Gillette company, Gillette, the best shave, right? And we ran an exercise, and the scenario was that the managing director was the guy who got sick, because he had gone to Vietnam and he visited the wrong place and come back and got sick. And it took us a week and a half to discover that he was sick. So of course he had infected the entire office, 250 people. So during the exercise, he's in his room. And this was a scenario, this is not for real, right? So I said, okay, so 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we get everybody together. Tomorrow we're activating our plan, and we're gonna pretend that we've had a disease come. I won't tell you who is sick yet, but you blokes go to our recovery site, you blokes do this, you blokes go home, da 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 da. And I think, okay, it's gonna take 45 minutes, we're out of here. 3 hours. 3 hours of discussion at a senior management level. What is the company's policy? If I have been infected at work by contact with the managing director, and I go home and my kids are sick, is the company going to pay for that? And I mean, this is all theoretical, you understand. It's at 8 o'clock at night. Are we going to wind up here pretty soon? So these kinds of issues are quite thorny, but they have been discussed at length.
Brenda?
Now, this is interesting. We're talking about theory, but of course,
Fear?
theory.
Here.
But I'm sorry.
And
But
fear.
Today, with the Ebola in the front, I mean, it's just overwhelming. And it's one of those situations like, what would I do? I mean, it's crazy. Can you just
give some insight on, you know, our own fears about Ebola, and we're working, and I'm at a university, and students, and the whole bit.
Yeah, my insight is that your fears are exaggerated. More people have been married to Kim Kardashian than have been sick in the United States, right? Maybe you saw that on that one on Facebook, right? It's a fact, right? Unless it's not spread in the air, it's only spread by contact with bodily fluids of an infected person. What is the likelihood that you are going to have contact with the bodily fluids of a person who's been infected with Ebola? It's pretty close to zero, right? I mean, if you're in the same train with them, they're not going to, by accident, you are not going to get sick. This is not, by the way, like influenza, which is going to make a whole bunch of people sick and kill 10 times, 100 times as many people in the United States this year. Right? So, Myra, keep calm, carry on. I know that's not the most professional advice, but with respect to Ebola, look, I have been dealing with epidemics for 10 years, and serious epidemics. We had more people die in Singapore from SARS than any other country on the planet. And who were they? They were, every single one of them was a healthcare worker. Are you a healthcare worker? Well, then, I think your odds are pretty small.
So is it the news media? Because that's,
Are you
I mean,
kidding?
it's
Yeah.
been pounding, and I think it's, I agree with you, it's about education and understanding that you can't get it. But when you hear it in the news 24/7, it does have an impact.
Look, I'm going to comment just as a person. Obviously, I have no expertise, but I want to oddly relate it back to what I was talking about with thinking about risk from a resilience framework. The dynamic is you cannot necessarily explain to people, you can't scientifically explain away irrational fear. You can't. You need to understand where that fear comes from and try to address it. So I do think within this context of thinking about risk and resilience, and it's funny you asked about your labor. This might seem like a big leap. But the reality is, what is the employee's rights and responsibilities in this situation is, yes, you can think about a business continuity plan, but you should be thinking about how do you give employees information about best practices so they can understand what their rights are as well. I think on the risk of something like a disease, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, again, I've read the science, I'm with it, I'm fine, I'm comfortable, but I understand that other people are comfortable. So how do you address their lack of comfort? How do you try to address their fear in the context that it is in, and sort of really don't try to explain it away. Again, the science isn't going to get you there. There's actually some studies coming out now saying that actually more facts and more science can make people dig in deeper into their denial. So you need to be very conscious of what they're hearing a little bit about this. And yes, there's all those. I didn't think anybody read the news or watched the news. So everybody's saying it's the news's fault. Well, as far as I know, none of my students read a newspaper, watch the news, so I don't know where they're getting their information. I mean, maybe it's online, but do we recognize that people get information from their friends, their communities, and you need to address, I think, whatever the strategy is for denial, you need to address it on the field and recognize, don't debate it, because rhetorically, you just can't respond, because they have other issues that they're really talking about. That's just a general
Ideally,
thought.
you'd like, if I were running, I do run a small business, my own. You'd like to, for infectious disease, and by which I mean including Ebola, and SARS, and bird flu, you'd like something that was effective, inexpensive, and visible. Am I right? I mean, when you think, what would be the criteria of something you'd like to do to show that you cared? Inexpensive, visible, and it actually worked. And so what we did, the same restaurant, by the way, when we were doing the infectious disease scenario with brewers, I said what you'd like to be known for, in my judgment, is you're the safest place to eat in Singapore. Now, on a day-to-day basis, that's probably not the most important. Our food tastes good, our beer is great. I mean, there are plenty of other things that you'd like to be, but in an infectious disease scenario, it would be a competitive advantage to be known as the safest place to eat, right? I said, what's the simplest thing you could do? So what they did is they installed anhydrous liquid disinfectant stations at all of the waiter stations, so that the waiters and waitresses could clean their hands. And that gave them, the employees, the feeling that the company cared about me, because they're worried about the guests, right? The guests saw them doing this, and so when the guests saw them doing this, the guests wanted to go over and, could I do that too? So then we ended up putting a gigantic bowl of essentially single serve anhydrous liquid disinfectant bottles at the counter at the front. Well, please take one, right? You take it away, and I said if this had gone on any longer, my advice is you call up the manufacturer and get your name printed on it so that it says Brewworks on it, right? So that everybody knows where it came from, right? Now, it's inexpensive, it's visible, it is, washing your hands is the single most effective way to prevent the spread of infectious disease, and it's a good idea, not just because of disaster. You with me?
Okay.
You're looking at me like I have two heads. Are you thinking, or you like the idea? Yeah?
So what I'm thinking actually is, because what we've identified here, I think, is best practices, which are easy to, or relatively easy to identify a variety of best practices in any disaster or resiliency planning. But then the challenge to me, and I was living on Long Island and Sandy and had some real fun times, is how do you operationalize that? And so what you just said to me closes the gap, because best practices, then you choose among the best practices, but then to get people to engage in those best practices by identifying some sort of self-interest, I think, largely. But to me, it's an operational question, and disaster planning, and I was involved in community level disaster planning, and I told them plainly, I understand you think I'm the right person to take on that task in the event of a disaster. I don't be home under my bed with all the chocolate I can gather. But I'm not doing it. I know I won't do it. I have other responsibilities. But to me, the challenge is how to operationalize these best practices, which we can identify, and how to get people to be resilient. So to go back to your restaurant example, those folks were getting ready for a terror attack, which, is possible. But in reality, their issue is much more likely to be disease. And to get people to shift their thinking to say, let's make a resiliency plan that addresses my fear of terror attack and my reality of potential disease seems to be like the next.
That is exactly what I was attempting to respond to. She described the perception of her her customers not having to, what do I do? These people are affected this way, these people are affected that. So I was attempting to suggest something that was low cost, visible, effective, right, and a good idea, even in a non-disaster situation. And operationalizing it meant go to the drugstore and buy a bunch of them.
Well, and we're getting her to buy into it, and the sweet spot of having it be not something that just addresses the fear, but it's actually useful.
Okay, right, exactly.
Yeah, I guess like these
I'm
programs.
sorry we've gotten off on disease.
No problem. These programs are great, but I guess I believe that successful this program is involving small businesses, even if you're helping small businesses. Many small businesses even have something to do with the resilient projects. I mean, my business, I do backup solutions, and I can help. I mean, I get affected with Sandy, but I can also help other businesses. And I've been trying, like since Sandy, to contact other organizations to provide my expertise so it can kind of engage with you. But it's been unsuccessful. So I really believe that if you can reach to businesses and people who has ideas to be part of that, it would be easy for you to spread it around. And just like we have to do that. So I guess my struggling is like, okay, I can help, but how can I?
Well, I don't know if you guys want to take that. Regarding with businesses, I have to admit, I see a few of my colleagues that we hit the ground, we have the resources, people will not show up. It's hard for me to bring you on board, Ayman? Ayman?
Yeah.
And say, okay, Ayman is going to have this presentation, but no one shows up. So, I mean, for us, we work really hard on getting the word out there, but it's small businesses understanding that it's okay to take a few hours of work off to go and become informed in order to protect themselves and be resilient. Does it happen? No. I mean, my partners that are out there know the struggle I'm talking about. We have the resources. Yes, we want to share. We'll bring in expertise if that's what they're looking for, because we also go out to the small business community and say, what do you need? tell us what you need. Because it's not my job to say, I believe this is what you need. I have my expertise, but just because I feel you need it, you have to believe you need it. And that's the problem with the small business community, which is probably kind of what Tony
No,
was saying.
that's the problem with the human brain.
Okay, so there you go. It's the human brain, I'm wrong.
We've spent 10,000 years developing the big part to control the amygdala, this part, which was the one that kept you from being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Sorry, kept your ancestors from being.
Next question here, and then we'll wrap it up.
Hi, I'm a municipal engineer. I'm also the head of my planning board in my town, coastal communities, worked in Monmouth County, Eastern Monmouth County my whole life, okay? So while this with Sandy is very important, a small business. I also represent a small business that has developed new technology to deal with emergency response to flooding and cleaning the water so that we just don't pump oil and gasoline and everything back out. For 2 years, I've been going around to all the engineering companies, the DEP, DOT, you name it, to everybody, and actually we've done trials on Monmouth University through the engineering department because it also deals with stormwater. The issue that problems that we have is that as a small business, that when I get into, and you were touching a nerve when you were speaking about dealing with governmental as what, the big package, because we go from the contractors up to the regulators, because everybody's saying, well, if they say okay, we'll go ahead. And what happens is everybody's looking at it and saying, what a great idea, we'll do it. The DEP will even fund it, but I can't get it into projects because it's new technology. And governmental agencies require that you either go through some process to become a sole source, which is a federal process, which is very difficult for a small business to look to do, but you can't become a big business until you go through starting as a small business. And the second part being, or you have to have 3 things that are like it that you can put on the specifications, but your new technology with an international patent that says you're unique and industry applicable, but you're unique. So I don't know if the Alliance or anything like that has looked at trying to deal with the fact that even if you get all your ducks in a row, you hit these kinds of things that almost require you to think within the box instead of think out of the box, because our regulation is always dealing with what we know, and no one ever wants to take the risk to be out of the box.
Again, I think another famous question, and what I'm hearing is, first of all, I need more of you to have this mashup of perspectives, because not most people are one or the other of those things that you said. With regard to your business, it's a little bit of your comment too. I think maybe that there is this concept of to what extent within the resilience enterprise broadly is innovation going to be critical to actually changing the current dynamic of resilience. So how then do we enable innovation? And that could be a small business question that really talks about enabling technical innovation around issues that, and what are the impediments to that? Again, I'm not in the, and the deep people say I'm not in the winner, picking the winner game, but on the other hand, we want to make sure that we create that innovation. If we're going to have engineering firms, honestly, who need to think very differently about the way they design, they give advice to municipalities, and that's my view. You have engineering companies who need to tell the Corps of Engineers to do things differently. If we need to think about how do we create a cost-benefit investment for a community around resilience, around stormwater, or getting water, out, and that creates the short-term benefit of cleaner water, but a long-term benefit of in a storm situation, you create some other values, or you're also making sure that you have continuity of operations, water. So again, I'm making that stuff up because the technology defies me, but it does suggest that perhaps there is a specific small business question that needs to be addressed about what are the general impediments to the small business, but then how specifically can we remove them in particularly unique circumstances of emergencies or responses? You don't want to create exceptions and then find out afterwards, oops, I screwed up. Government is conservative in some ways for good reasons, not always for bad reasons. So, but I'm hearing, and I don't know because I'm out of my depth, and also this matchmaking with credible small businesses that can provide advice and technical assistance to either other small businesses, creating those kind of links and those networks, networks of practice, might be another strategy. And again, this workshop I think is to come up with some of the problems and then the solutions and best practices. So hopefully
these are the kinds of issues that I would think you would be engaging directly. Again, anytime you want to reach out to me, you have the contact information, but again, it's beyond me to design a solution, but I can hear a little bit maybe how you might want to engage some of the problems in the context of today's workshop.
Well, because one of the things is because the finances it takes to get to where people will incorporate you is almost like you almost need like to have a support that's going to help those companies that are bringing the innovation in. And so it just may be an idea for thinking, because you got to get past these hurdles.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, a round of applause. And now we're going into our next section.
Are we?
which- Yeah, I believe we are. I just wanted to introduce myself for those of you who may not know who I am. My name is Jacqueline Mejias Fuertes, and I am the director of the Small Business Development Center, new name, America's SBDC, New Jersey at Brookdale Community College. Brenda already told you about our organization. I'm proud being the director of the SBDC at Brookdale. It's been around for over 30 years. The resources that they provide to help businesses are phenomenal. I have to admit, when I came to New Jersey, I came to the SBDC. I started a business because of the SBDC, a successful one at that. So the fact that I am now the director of the SBDC that I actually came to really makes me proud. You know, we're here to help. As much as we put information out there, we need you to come to us, to send people to us. They need assistance, whether they're starting up, moving into the next stage, seeking financing, need a strategy, sometimes just brainstorming. The fact is that small businesses here, especially in Monmouth and Ocean County, is made up, 95% of the businesses are made up by small businesses, small business owners. I know what it is to be a small business owner. We have a lot of solo entrepreneurs. What does that mean? You're running the business by yourself. We're here to help. So I just wanted to put that out there for you and to remind you, we're here. We have information in the back. You can find us on the web. You know, we're out there. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it, we're on it. You know, it's all about being there for the small business. So that being said, now I'm giving it back to Nathaniel, which we are going into some questions here. Maybe not. Maybe I'll be doing the questions. I see Nathaniel's talking at the moment. So we are going into the next snap poll. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Am I handing it back to Nathaniel? Am I still talking? You're doing the snap poll? Or will I take it from here? You know me?
I'm
Okay, so I'm going
following
with
the
it.
script. I do what I'm
In
told.
fact, you sound like me. Okay, so the next question up is going to be, how do you think about managing disruptions?
Can you see the answers from back there?
Can you see them? Or should I read them out to you? Okay, the first one is, we'll figure it out when it happens. Number 2, we have a crisis management plan that we practice. Number 3, we have business continuity plan that has already identified and preempt the impacts of future disruptions. And number 4, we have built resilience into our day-to-day operation and are capturing other business benefits.
So increasing levels of having done your homework, right? If you've done all your homework and you're very well prepared, that's number 4. If you haven't done a thing and you're going to make it up when it happens again, that's number 1. Can you press the relevant button? Well, I got half of you. There we go. I'm looking for a number around 30. Some of you are asleep. Press the button on your head. Press the button on the.
God, let's vote.
Okay, 26. We're getting there. Anybody at 20? Okay, come on. We're gonna get to 30.
God,
Press
those
it toward.
buttons.
Grab
Press
it one
those
next to
buttons.
you and press it too.
There we go, 32.
Okay. And vote twice, right? No worries. All right. Okay, so 45% is this one to 4 left to right? Yeah, okay, so yeah, right. This is pretty statistically representative in my judgment. Half of I would have said it would be more than businesses had no plan, no plan at all. Presumably, that's at least in part why some of you came. I'm pleased to see about a third of the people have plans and are pretty well prepared. That's also statistically about average in my experience. Okay? There's another question?
Yes, we do.
There's a whole series of them, right?
Okay, yes. So the next question, do you have a business continuity plan? Yes or no?
Let me just qualify that question. It's written, not, oh, I have a plan, it's right up here. This is called a wish list, right? This is the same one you give to Santa in a couple of weeks, right? Plan written down. You can look at, you edit it. Microsoft Word has been involved. Okay, 27, getting to 31 more. Okay, very good. All right. Yes and no. Taking bets? Yes is 68%? Really?
No.
No is the
The
correct.
opposite.
Why not? Very simple. There's no commercial benefit to doing so. You have a plan, you will not get more business by having a plan, unless there's a disaster, right? Which fortunately doesn't happen very often. Okay?
Okay, next question. Does your business continuity plan address climate risk?
Climate risk fundamentally being drier or wetter, and maybe both. I'll be very surprised if there's many of them who say yes to this, right? I don't know many companies that have a climate risk. There we go, yeah. I'm impressed that 25% of you have plans that address this. Very impressive, good, okay. Next question.
This is, should your
Okay,
business-
this is my question that I slipped in. But I want to ask the controversial question.
Should your business be allowed to refuse in order to vacate your property in a known tidal flood zone? Yes, no, maybe.
So, in Australia, where they had in 2009, they had a gigantic fire in Victoria. That's where Melbourne is. I don't know whether you know about it, but one of the most controversial issues in the follow-up investigation was the people who said no. The fireys came around and said, out you go, right? You got to abandon your home. And people said, to hell with you, I'm staying. And as a result, some of them lost their lives, some of them lost their property, and the emergency responders lost their lives trying to help them, right? So from an emergency manager's perspective, if I tell you to get out, by God, I do not want to hear from you when the water is up to your neck and you want me to come and rescue you. So I'm saying, if I give you an order, I being the municipality or your town, out you go, should you be allowed as a small business owner, I'm not talking about your house, your business. Ma'am, you have to abandon, out you go. Get in the boat. Can you say no? Yes or no? Please don't choose maybe. That's the wussy answer. Yes or no? Now we're talking, see, with more interesting questions, more of you are interested in answering. Go ahead. What is red?
Red is no, the light blue, 28 is yes.
Those of you who said no, you shouldn't be allowed to say, I'd just like you to note that the other half of the room disagrees with you, right? This is the problem. So when the emergency manager says, the town engineer says, you should leave, right? Half of the people think you're wrong. You can't make me leave my business, right? Which is going to be quite difficult when you're trying to respond to sea level rise, isn't it? Right? Because you can see it coming 2 years ahead. Ma'am, your business is in a flood zone. Yes, I own the building. Right? I'm about to get wiped out. By the way, if my insurance company hears that you've told me to get out, I will never get insurance ever again. Right? Very difficult. Okay. Next question. So, related question, can the public authorities
Refuse permission.
deny you permission to use your property? So you apply for a license to operate your business in thus and so a location? No. Now, I'm very carefully not saying home properties, right? I'm talking about businesses. Can they tell you, no, you can't work, you can't operate here? Too dangerous. Yes or no? I think we can pretty well guess we're going to be about 50-50 here, right? Okay, Seth? Wow.
Wow.
This is a property that you don't occupy yet?
No, it's your business in theory. It's your business in a known flood zone, right? So, which one is 68%?
Yes.
68% yes. That is, that the authority should say you can't operate here. Really? Oh.
Because you're risking.
And you say yes. Wow. Okay, well, the municipal authorities are gonna love you, but when it's your business and they come around and say, I'm sorry, we're not renewing your license. This is what's gonna happen. It's not gonna come and say, out you go. They're gonna say, when you come back to renew your business license, that area has been identified as at risk of flooding. And we don't wanna let you operate there, because if you do, then you're going to call us up and put a burden on the entire tax base of coming and rescuing you, right? We're not going to let you do that. Very controversial. I'm shocked, actually. Right? Yeah. Okay. We have more
Private
questions?
citizens, yes, we do. Should private property owners be assisted with public funds for damage caused by a climate change?
Okay, sorry, this is the hand grenade into the discussion, right? Open warfare, yes?
That's exactly why people, 68% said that the public authority should be able to take it up, because we're also thinking as taxpayers,
Yeah,
okay, we don't, if you're where you shouldn't be to begin with,
yeah.
New Jersey especially, the taxpayers at large, I'm not speaking for myself, I'm saying it's by and large politically,
Yeah.
are not, they've had enough of replacing
Yeah.
people's mansions.
Oh, I'm
okay,
sorry,
they
I
just-
hadn't thought of that. Yeah, I'm supposed to have 2 years of experience of people with their hands out
Yeah.
looking for, I need help, I need help.
Well, especially since some of these people have like $3 million mansions along
Yeah,
the
yeah.
beachfront.
Well,
that
that's
people,
why I
the
asked
average
this
guy can't
question.
relate to.
Okay, so we're not categorizing these private property owners. They may or may not have $3 million mansions, right? But do you expect
just saying
public
that's what's
funds
in
to bail,
people's heads. I
public
would
funds to
agree
bail
with
them out?
Agreed.
By the way, your funds to bail them out.
Are we there yet? No, almost.
Almost 30,
Come on.
yeah, we're getting
Come
there.
on. Okay.
No is 57%. It was just like the other question, right? Almost exactly. I just let those of you who say no, I'd just like you to note that the other half of the room disagrees with you, right? Which is what makes a horse race in a presidential election. Right? Okay.
I wanted to ask a question.
Yes, please.
If these scenarios happen,
Yes.
and let's say you own the building,
Yes.
now you're told that you got to get out of the building.
Yes.
So you have all your equipment in the building that you own,
Yes.
but you can't sell the building
Yeah.
to nobody else.
Very difficult.
Yes, so it's a big loss. But it was the government that said it was okay to move there because they never said it was a
Yeah.
off
So the
limit when you
question
bought
is,
it.
I'm a business owner, I own the building, I have my equipment there. The municipality, the regulatory authority said it was okay to operate there.
Right,
And then I suffer a disaster, right, or suffer a loss.
right.
Sorry,
Or nearby.
help me out, give me the last part of the question.
Or, well, the government didn't say it was a risk to when you were initially getting the building.
Yeah.
So now you can't even sell the building back to somebody else, and
And if your insurance company finds out that that you're in an area where the government has thought about declaring that, but you will either not get insurance or it will be very expensive.
exactly. So therefore, it's a big loss to the property.
It's a
to the
big loss to
owner.
you and the property, yeah, absolutely. And so my question, when I made my opening remarks, you cannot rely on the government, right?
Right.
You will have to make that decision on your own, right?
So when a person is starting, when you're looking to buy property, you really have to look at all of those issues.
Well, I would have thought that if you're buying a property, that your risk assessment on the property would be one of the things you'd look at, right? Is it on the cliff? Are the stilts coming out from underneath it, right? Does the land appear to be eroding away? Blah, blah, blah. I'm being
Let's say
facetious.
it's a beautiful area, and has a lot of trees,
Yeah,
but now there's a lot of tree fire all of a sudden.
yeah.
I mean,
People want to live in beautiful areas. That's why they
Yeah,
buy
I
houses.
mean-
And one of the things they consider beautiful is the trees. And this is why the fire in Australia was so deadly.
Yeah, maybe
People
there's
want to
never-
live in the trees all around. And as long as the trees are close to your house, they're also a fire risk.
so maybe when you did your risk assessment,
Yeah.
there was never a fire in that area. You know what I'm saying? So there wasn't any,
You do a risk assessment of being on the 99th floor of the World Trade Center, there never was an airplane flying into the building.
that's true. Okay, you got your point.
Okay, sir?
Can I have a comment? I guess like back to the Ebola questions. The media succeed to put a fear on us.
Yeah, doing a pretty
But
good job.
I guess what you guys wanted to do is to put a real fear through the resilience that you have to be prepared. Like, not fear, I would say like educate people. If the media was, succeeded to put like a wrong,
Right. Actually, if the question is SBDC, SBA, are we trying to put fear into people to motivate them?
maybe not fear.
I'll
maybe
let Jacqueline
education.
answer, but I think her answer would be no. right?
Maybe education.
Yeah, the
It's
first-
Awareness, I'm sorry, I used the wrong word, but I put like a wrong example. The media put like a fear that you told us that it's not real.
I'm not interested in awareness.
Yeah.
I've spent 20 years being aware and trying to make other people aware. It doesn't work, right? It doesn't change the percentages that I'm seeing. The purpose of today, the innovation today, is that we're trying to get you to find a reason to prepare, a motivation to prepare, that an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
In Asia, you probably have seen the yin and yang symbol before, right? The idea in Asian thought is that with every problem, there is an opportunity, right? And as long as we're focused on, well, let me give you, in Ebola, you want the business opportunity is selling personal protective equipment, right? If I'm a mask and a glove and a respirator guy, maybe I am in heaven, right? Keep it up, right? Because I'm going to sell a bunch. This happened after in SARS. Companies going around buying masks to give people to wear in the office. Well, have you ever tried to wear a mask in the office? You can't talk on the phone, right? But people went out and bought thousands of them, right? You see, every opportunity, every disaster, an opportunity. Okay, do we have more questions?
Yes, the last one.
All right.
Which is most important to protect from climate change?
And by the way, you're going to be asked this in this workshop.
Using public funds, and you can only choose one.
Hospitals, schools, public infrastructure, private property. Now, you can only choose one, and I recognize that in a real situation, the money will be spread around and allocated by percentage. The purpose is to force you into choosing which one of those is your priority. If you're at a municipal authority and you have X dollars to spend, but you can only spend it on one thing, one of those four things. Schools, hospitals, public infrastructure, that's roads, electricity, utilities, that kind of stuff, or on protecting private property, which one would it be? 1 through 4. Wow. 30 answered 30, well. You had some views on this, huh? Excellent. Okay, what do you think? Public infrastructure. Wow. Okay, that's good, because that's the first segment of the exercise. Right? I'm impressed. I think you're just doing that because it's a workshop and no one's actually asking you to write a check today, right? But fair enough. Good. Okay. Are those all of our questions? Jenna?
Yes, they are. Now we're going to go into a tabletop exercise, but can I ask those that are down the middle road, can you join into the other tables that are, you can pick whichever
The
one.
exercise was set up that there would be
So this
8 people at each table.
Right, that's why.
The fewer there are at each table, the more you'll get a chance to talk, but I can't have a table of 2 people, right? So those of 2s and 2s and 2s, move or have someone come join you. I'm happy to have them. So let's have roughly, and those of you who are sitting in the back and the exhibitors, if you want to get into this and have something to say, we'd be delighted to have you. But if you want to drink coffee, and that's okay, you can do that too. So there's only 4 at that table. There's an opportunity right there, sir. Right? Those people look friendly. Okay, sheet number 1, impact 1 to everybody. And as a result of doing this and pulling them apart, you may want to regroup them so that they're not correlated. same thing. Going okay?
Okay, first, we're conducting another snap poll. The question is up. Do you have a plan to sustain communication and internet during disruptions? Yes or no?
Right.
Come on. I can't see the response numbers from here. Where are we, Seth?
So should I be doing the MC here?
Well,
It looks like we've got 21 responses and 52% said yes.
Okay.
Have a plan to sustain communication.
Fantastic. Okay, next question coming up. Thank you, Bob, for your assistance.
Have you discussed mitigating the impact of disruptions with your data or voice providers? Yes or no? Will today. So far it's working.
Make sure you're entering.
All right, we're up to 21 responses, it looks like.
Okay.
33% have said yes, they have discussed mitigating impact with their providers. Not bad, room for opportunity there, right? That's part of what I'm here to do, is help you interact and ask questions and give you some good pointed questions, perhaps go and ask your carriers about. So third question, have you discussed what your suppliers are doing to mitigate the impact of IT or communications disruptions? Again, yes or no? Similar question. 22. All right, about
Wow.
the same percentage. About a third of the folks have actually had that conversation with their carriers. So, is that it?
One more.
Okay. Can you perform your job effectively even if working remotely?
Oh, yes. I say that should be 100% yes, but that's just my opinion, the technology person.
Define effectively and define remotely, right?
Yeah.
Caribbean.
Okay, you got me there.
All right, so 22 responses, 82% said yes. That's fantastic. Great to see that do that. I think that's what we're seeing, kind of an evolution over the past 5 to 10 years as people are kind of mobilizing in general. So
Okay, Bob?
that's great. Thanks.
Now. All right, so now I just want to take a moment to introduce our panelists. We have Bob Clemmy from Verizon Wireless. Is that your name? Okay. We have Ray Malin, and he's the manager of emergency preparedness and Jersey Central, Jersey Central Power and Light, and Bill Wells, the director and fuel operator at New Jersey Natural Gas. Thank you, panelists. So, they're all going to give a short presentation as to who they are. So we'll start with Bob.
Going up here or doing it from the panel?
Can you do it from there? Can they hear you? You'll be able to hear?
We had some slides as well.
Oh, so in that case, here you go.
Podium?
And before we go on to our next speakers, we are going to take another snap poll. Here, the snap poll is going to focus on energy disruption. So, first question on the snap poll.
Do you know who your energy providers are?
Oh, let's say yes or no. Let's see.
Said
Okay.
yes.
That's a good thing.
I'm worried about the 4%.
Okay, next question.
Have you discussed mitigating the impact of energy disruptions with your energy providers? said no.
Wow.
13% said yes.
Okay.
Do you know how to contact your energy providers if and when a disruption occurs? We should all have practical experience with this one.
I know. And the results?
88% said yes. That's a
Good.
good number.
That should be more, but okay. Next question?
Do you have a plan to keep the business running if the power goes out?
Hmm.
71% said yes. That's a good number.
That is. And the last question?
Do you have a plan to keep the business running if you were to lose access to natural gas? Oh, I think that's for,
Yeah. Well, we'll kind of put the two questions together, but go ahead, just answer. Okay.
about 52% said no and 48 said yes.
Okay.
I snapped.
Should keep on going. Oh, no, it's not there.
Ah, wrong button. Well, good afternoon, and thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Ray Mallon, Manager of Emergency Preparedness for Jersey Central Power and Light. And today we're going to talk a little bit about our past experience, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing differently since Sandy to help you deal with either blue sky outages or with your storm outages. But we'll do a quick review of the past, and we'll talk about what we're doing today. Right now, a little bit about First Energy. Basically, we are headquartered in Akron, but locally here, I'm here in Jersey Central Power and Light as one of the operating companies of First Energy. We're one of the largest companies, about 6 million customers. We're fairly large, from $50 billion in assets, about $15 billion in annual revenues, and about 16,000 employees. We as JCP&L is one of 10 operating companies for First Energy. And here's some of the facts about us. We're in about 2 regions. We call one our northern region, and we're in the central region. And as the Manager of Emergency Preparedness, I support both regions. You can see we cover about 13 of the 23 counties in Jersey. And we cover, I can't read all the slides from this angle, about 236 municipalities. And we have basically 14 operating districts or service centers that go out every day to either build new or to maintain the lines. An idea of who we support for water and sewer facilities. Very, very important during a major event. And you may recall we had 3 major events. We had Irene in August of 2011. 6 weeks later, we had the October storm, which was up north. You may not have been aware of that, but we had significant outages there. Then obviously everyone's aware of Hurricane Sandy. Just to give you an idea of some of the outages, we have about 750,000 customers who were out for Irene out of about 1.1 million customers. For the northern region, October storm was about 375,000 customers were out at about 550,000 in our customer base. And with Sandy, it was basically, we lost all our customers during Sandy for the north and central regions. Okay. This slide to give you an idea of the 10 most damaging storms. I know the people in the back may not see this, but this gives you an idea of where the major events were in the past 100 years. And notice the majority are in the Gulf. But what's important here, if they do come up the East Coast, the difference is going to be in the impact. Once you hit the Mid-Atlantic region, you have a very dense population. As we know, New Jersey is the most densely populated state in the country. So when you have outages on our circuits, it usually encompasses thousands of customers on a circuit. Here's an example of Hurricane Sandy as opposed to Katrina. This is why it's called Superstorm Sandy. It covered an expanse twice the size of Hurricane Katrina. When you look at the map coming from the ocean westward into the United States, you're basically looking at ground zero was Ocean County. We were on the northern side of the impact area, which for all meteorologists will tell you is the most impactful and devastating part of a hurricane. That is why New York, Long Island, the city, and we as New Jersey were impacted the way we were. Okay. This was Hurricane Irene and some of the devastation from Irene. One of the interesting things about Irene was not just so much the winds, but also the soil conditions. People forget that Hurricane Irene hit the end of August, but do you remember how wet that August was? That 2-month period between August and September, from a meteorological and climatologist standpoint, was one of the wettest in 1,000 years. And you say, why does that matter? Because the trees don't have the root system to hold them, so even with tropical force winds, the trees will come down. Here's Hurricane Sandy, some of the impactful events of trees falling on people's houses, across roads. And we've showed the pictures of the snowstorm in West Virginia because Sandy was so large, and because of the cold front coming through, we had a snow event. So as part of FirstEnergy's effort, we also had to restore customers in the snow while we all thought in Jersey we were responding to a tropical event. This was the devastation on the Barrier Islands. I mentioned to some folks at my table about the debris. This was one of the aspects of the storms that we had not really faced before, was the element of debris removal in order to get to do our jobs, to clear the roads either from fallen trees or from the roads to access the devastated areas. Give you an idea about the level of outages, Superstorm Sandy, by all measures, was not the most costly. Katrina is. Sandy was number 2. But from the number of outages, Superstorm Sandy was the largest. By 8.5 million customers were out along the Atlantic seaboard. FirstEnergy had 2.2 million of those. JCP&L was 1.1. That'll give you an idea of the scale of the effort it would take to restore our customers here in the Mid-Atlantic region. As part of our preparation for Sandy, we start the process several days, if not weeks in advance, with our meteorologists. This is an actual picture of our 2 meteorologists. This is Brian Colts and Peter Manousis. Brian Colts used to be the assistant director of the Weather Service in Bermuda, and he's considered a tropical meteorologist expert. In fact, the only reason he came back from Bermuda is because his visa expired and they wouldn't renew it. So that's how he came to us. Both have worked with the U.S. Weather Service and with NOAA. So when they tell us the weather storm is coming and they tell us it's going to be bad, we really believe them. And they predicted the left hook that Sandy was going to take, and that's helped us prepare for the next storm. Once we get the alert that a weather event will occur, we begin our preparations for the storm. We evaluate our existing crews, and if necessary, we'll go out and get mutual assistance from our regional partners. We call them a consortium of mutual assistance. And they range from Maine all the way down to Florida and as far west as Mississippi. An example of mutual assistance is during Sandy, we partnered with the Department of Energy and at other federal levels to bring in crews and equipment from the West Coast. And this is a picture of a C-131 landing McGuire. Really good war story about this. From the Emergency Management Center we have in Akron, I got a call saying we have inbound coming to LaGuardia to help you. And I said, I don't need them to land LaGuardia, I need them to land in McGuire. This is Jersey, it's not New York. So the call goes back and eventually goes into the State Regional Operations Center where my current boss was there, and the Air Force General came to him and said, do you know how difficult it is to change a plane in mid-flight? And he just said, just turn the wheel a little to the right, and you'll be in Jersey. Well, there was a certain scorn that an Air Force general might have for a civilian who's trying to make light of the seriousness of the situation. But this picture attests that they responded and they landed in McGuire. I just want to give that as an example of the level of commitment that First Energy was making at all levels of government to bring help to Jersey, because this is what we needed. And as part of the post-Irene and October storm is our commitment to work with federal, state, and county officials to make sure we clear the roads and get to where we need to be to restore power. Part of the process is damage assessment. We go out there and we assess how bad it is. Even if it's on a blue sky day, there may be a person sent out there to assess how bad it is. Then we establish our priorities, and we do this in concert depending on the scale of the event, whether it's from the county or from the state, opening the roads, making sure the hospitals are open and ready to serve their customers and their patients, as well as any other priorities that may come in that are assessed and then assigned to, as part of a work package to be restored. It is very labor intensive. It takes a crew. Well, actually for Sandy, I onboarded 8,500 people as part of my job. That's like landing a division in the Army on a particular day in battle. Now, granted, I did it over a week, but that's how many people we brought in out of state to work the storm. Very labor intensive. They were from 36 states and various consortiums and co-ops from all across the eastern seaboard and as far west as California, Oregon, and Washington. The process is quite simple. We start with the big stuff first. We start with the big transmission lines. You may know them as the towers. We bring it down to the smaller poles, and then ultimately to the side of the house or the side of the business. Why is that important? Because if the big stuff doesn't work, the little stuff isn't going to get the juice. There we go. The most important thing we have is safety, the public safety and the safety of our employees. When we do our assessment, we try to clear any safety obstacles first. We make sure that we have people standing by for an unsafe wire condition to make sure that the public is safe. We also have communications during an event to the various county, state, and municipal participants to make sure that they're appraised of the situation and when the time of restoration will occur. We also have expanded our outreach via social media with Twitter and Facebook. We also have water and ice availability and any other type of shelter location information that we're asked to provide. More importantly, and for you as a small business, we also have a web page, and hopefully everyone's aware of the outage web page that's been rolled out in the past year, where you as a customer, should you have an outage, you can report it on this web page, or you can call it in on the 800 number, and you can track the outage via this web page. So you just go to firstenergy.com, and you click on the outage map, and you can see what outages are current today. My hope is today, if you were to do it, be a blue sky day, be very few outages. Obviously, during a storm event, and you're involved with that storm in some way, you can check your outages. This is how it looks, and you can see, hopefully you can't see from the back, but they clicked on a certain outage, it will tell you the estimated time that that outage will be restored, the status of whether the crew is there investigating, assigned, dispatched, and help you assist you with your business plan of what you need to do next in case that outage duration is longer than you expect. My Town is part of the website where we give information to the municipalities as to our storm situation. We also have social media outreach. In the magnificent world of the iPhone, you can get statuses on your outage via an app on your phone. So if you're a small business person and for some reason you're not in your office, you can on an account basis get updates on your outages on your iPhone. And you can do that online. We have a whole list of things that you can get about your account via your iPhone. So you just go to the webpage and sign up based on your account, and you'll get all the alerts, get all the statuses, and you can also text messaging. We also have all the other mobile website access. So you can access the outage page from your mobile phone. And finally, the big key points about restoration is safety is our first priority. We are going to plan for the major events that we see coming as best we can. And given that we've had fairly good success with this, we expect to even get better at predicting and planning and executing for our storms. We also will be communicating on a regular basis with our local, county, and state officials, and ultimately with all you nice folks out there. Okay.
Thank you, Ray. Now we have Bill from New Jersey Natural Gas.
Oh, good. Well, let's see how this works.
Got it, or all the way to the...
This one?
Yes.
No?
One more. There you go.
All right. Well, I'm Bill Wells. I'm the Director of Operations for New Jersey Natural Gas. As Ray was explaining to you all about the storm, you know, we had a lot of the similar problems as the power company. Our company is a much smaller company than Jersey Central. We're an LDC, a local distribution company, with about 500,000 customers, and we're mainly in 3 counties, Ocean, Monmouth, and Morris counties. We do have some customers in Middlesex and a few in Burlington also. All right, I put a couple of bullets in. I was actually going to focus mostly on your efforts to what you could do with your gas system if you were to be confronted by some kind of an emergency that was going to curtail your service. Disruptions to the natural gas system are extremely rare, and our pipes are all underground. We don't have the exposure to wind and things like the power company does. But as everybody knows, when Superstorm Sandy hit, we actually had to curtail service to 30,000 customers, which is a huge amount of customers to us, in 4 areas: the Seabright Peninsula, Manasquan Beach, Seaside Peninsula from Bay Head to South Seaside Park, and all of Long Beach Island. And most of that was due to the storm surge. Literally, the pipes came out of the ground. If you saw the pictures of the breach in the Manalocan Bridge, we lost a little bit over 1 mile of 12-inch steel pipe, which is this big, came ripping right out of the ground, and we could no longer control the release of gas. So, for safety of all of our customers and all of the people that were still there, we had to shut in the system. You know, the third bullet there is about the loss of service for most businesses and residents usually occurs in natural gas area through line breaks, small track hose, backhoes, things like that break your service line that serves your individual house, or in some cases where it's a large scale project, maybe the main that serves your street. But that's usually the total impact. It's a much smaller area than what you would see with a electrical outage. Our company is really focused on damage prevention. If you see anybody digging on your property, whether it's for you, your landscapers, somebody's putting in a sign or a mailbox or anything like that, there's a New Jersey one-call system, 811. Call the one call, get a mark out, know where your underground facilities are, get ahead of it, be helpful in the damage prevention area. Your gas meters our gas meters are almost entirely outside. We're a very suburban company. There's very few inside meters, so our meters are exposed to the outside elements, which means in the winter, the snow and ice. Now, if the meters get completely encased in snow and ice, there is a regulator on them and it has a vent. That vent has to breathe. If it gets encased in ice, it'll shut down your system. So every year we put out PSAs and things in the newspaper, and you'll even hear them on the radio and thing about keep your gas meter clear of snow and ice. So if you can clear off the snow and ice, you could keep your business going very simply. Just be careful, use a broom, don't be hitting it with a big shovel or anything like that. That's not what we're going for, but to keep the vents clear, your meter will function just fine as long as they're clear. For communications, we have multiple communications, just like the electric company. We have phone numbers, and we have a website, Facebook, Twitter. We have an IVR on our call system that'll even walk you through different steps if you're reporting no gas or something like that you don't even have to speak to a real person. When we have an outage, we'll work around the clock to fix it, whether it's even if it's a single service or if it's a multiple street outage. Our people just come when they come in. We stay until the outage is complete. It's not one of those things we shut down and come back at it later. So once we're working on it, we'll restore your service as quickly as possible. The aftermath of the storm has created a huge surge in requests for emergency generators. Businesses, homes have been adding them. Every day we get requests from customers who are adding generators. Now, when you're dealing with your electrical contractor, they'll most likely tell you to call the gas company. The reason is to make sure your service line and your meter set is adequately sized for your generator. You certainly don't want to spend all this money to make your business or your home able to stay in power while the electric is out, to come to find out that you didn't call us and upsize your meter set so that when your generator kicks on, your meter won't pass enough gas to run it. So give us a call. We send somebody out. We'll send a surveyor out. He'll check all of your information, and then we'll schedule a crew to come out and put the right equipment in to serve you. This really goes for any time you do any kind of addition to your gas equipment, whether you're adding generators extra heaters or things like that, just let us know, and we'll make sure that our equipment is the right size. Let me just go through a couple of things. I made some notes here from during the day. Like the electric company was talking about, where they have to work on the big stuff first. In Superstorm Sandy, what we had to do is we had to get the supply back to the areas that were curtailed. Now, especially in the Long Beach Island area, there was places that had sustained no damage at all, but had no gas. But the electric and gas are completely different, I think, in a lot of ways, because gas, we have to bring the supply in one step at a time. It's sort of like the garden hose analogy. You know, you can't get anything out of the end until you get it all the way through the hose. So we had to bring supply through areas that weren't devastated to come into areas that were. And with gas, you have to lock in every single account before you can bring the gas back on. And some of our problems is damage that was occurring during the restoration period. While the gas was turned off, people were in there excavating, trying to clear away debris, sand, garbage, everything else, houses, cars, and as they were digging, they were breaking lines. So without the gas on them, we didn't really even know where they were without a lot of investigative work. So it took us almost 8 weeks to restore the gas to the last place that got it was the bottom of Seaside Park. And that's the reason. It's a very painstaking process, but it doesn't happen very often. But when it does happen, it'll take a little time, and we have to work safely and take every precaution for not only our employees but the public. The lessons we learned in Superstorm Sandy have been given out to a lot of local utilities over the last 2 years. I've done quite a few of those presentations for utilities. This is really the first time I spoke to businesses about a restoration process, but it's not an occurrence that happens, like I said, every day. I worked at this company 40 years. This is the first time that we curtailed more than a handful of customers. So I think if you want to make sure your businesses stay in power, natural gas, the areas to concentrate on are your meter set and your service line, so that it doesn't get damaged, so that some other act doesn't put you out of business that you may have some chance to prevent. Thank you.
Now we're going to take a few questions, if there's any for the panel. Does anyone have questions or a question?
I saw a few people using cell phones to grab a few of your slides. Wondering if the information's not proprietary, could you possibly make that available to us?
Absolutely. I don't know what the mechanism is to share it, but
Okay.
we provided the.
Jacqueline,
Yes.
is there some mechanism that you can?
Share it now, you're saying?
Not necessarily
No,
right now.
no, we'll
but-
get it to you. We have your email. We'll send it out.
I
for
got
all
your
those who
business card at the
participate.
table, so I can definitely send it to you at least.
Okay. Question?
I know, for Verizon, in one of the slides it was mentioned, thank you. In one of the slides it was mentioned multiple service providers. Is roaming considered that or no? Roaming. Let's say you have a cell phone and roaming, let's say the power, the cell in your area is out, but then you could roam using another carrier.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an alternative. What you found is that roaming was, I'd call it more predominant, probably 10 years ago when the various national providers didn't have national networks. However, it's still common today. So for example, if one carrier's network is having an issue but they have a roaming agreement with another carrier that is still working in that area, oftentimes those customers will be able to roam onto that other network. And one of the things to be careful with that is that varies municipality by municipality, state by state. So it's hard to know necessarily that, you know, if you're with carrier X, that they will always roam to carrier B, you know, during that event. So technically it does work, but it's a tough one to keep track of because it's changing.
Any other questions?
Yes, I'm sorry, I can't see your name from here,
Bill?
gentleman from Natural Gas. Bill. Bill, first of all, thank you all for very good presentations. Being technology is moving along for everyone else, and we now, the United States, is becoming such a tremendous source of natural gas. Do you have any, you made a thing about your plants basically underground and safe. Now, I live up in northern Jersey where we can't get natural gas because you can't get underground. That's what I'm asking you, actually. I'm wondering, do the gas companies have any technology coming that's going to put them above ground or be able to get into difficult terrains like Sussex County that's all rock?
Well, in our Morris County division in northern New Jersey, a lot of the times that we do have to install gas mains, we actually have to blast to install them. There's very strict federal DOT regulations on the installation of natural gas pipes, so I don't think you're going to see any above ground installations, but the removal of the rock and then the pipes to be installed and then encased in a sand cover is you know, a federal regulation. So that's the way gas pipes are going to be installed, because it's important not only to install it correctly, but make sure that it's covered correctly and that the coatings are good so that it doesn't corrode over time. So I don't think you'll see much change there. I think a lot of times the natural gas will follow the population. If your area is sparsely populated and doesn't really prove out to be a viable alternative financially, it probably won't get built out because of you know, the system has to be able to, the customers have to be able to support the system. So.
Thank you.
Ray, did you possibly anticipate bringing in staffing from 36 states? And how could you have anticipated half that, or even if you did anticipate 36, you know, where you're going to house them, feed them, you know, bed them for that long? And had the Great Adventure deal been, had you coordinated that 2 years in advance? I mean, or did that happen a week before? You know, whose idea to feed them and put them up there?
Okay, to answer your question, a lot of yeses to all those questions. Probably the one no being, I couldn't have imagined it would have been 36 states. To give you an idea, for Irene, we had folks on the property basically from our sister operating companies. And then I was working here in Long Branch, and then I moved up north to support them. During the October storm, we had many municipal as well as other utilities that came to help us, plus our own sister affiliates that were here helping us for that. We had a lot of out-of-state utilities that helped us there, particularly Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi. So when I came back for Sandy a year later, we already had established those working relationships. So because you had this succession of 3 major events, and trying to help you, this is only 14 months between Irene and Sandy. So we had, by Sandy, we already had established contracts with places like Great Adventure, with Blue Claw Stadium, with other staging sites already in place. So when these events happen, we just basically say, okay, we want to exercise our contracts now, we want to take over the Great Adventure parking lot or the First Energy parking lot, and we also had staging sites up north. So if you look at Irene, we had the staging sites, those places under contract, and then obviously with the October storm, we had those places under contract to support those efforts. When you actually get the event is when you decide how you're going to scale up, whether you're going to have your fuel, your material, and your basically heating facilities, and ultimately hoteling accommodations were an issue. because with people without power, not all the motels have backup generation, so they aren't in service. So in some cases, and I'll use an example, Old Dominion. Old Dominion's utility out of North Carolina, and in a post-Sandy, they agreed to come, and they asked Ray, do you want us to bring everything? And I said, well, what do you mean by everything? Well, we'll bring our own cooks, we'll bring our own fueling folks, we'll bring our own bunk trailers, and we'll bring all our mechanics and all our stuff to be self-supported. So I said, sold. Okay, and just to give you an idea, this is like days 2 or 3 after Sandy, and I'm not quite sure how bad is just yet, because we haven't done all the assessments. And one of the things we had talked about was how much fuel to bring. And I said, well, how many fuel trucks do you have? Well, we have the tanker trailers that go 5,000 or 10,000 gallons. And I said, do you think you can bring those? Well, we got 4 of them. I said, why don't you bring all 4? It was probably the best decision I made, because fuel became such an issue. And you don't want to have your utility crews competing with the local economy for what ultimately became a very scarce commodity. So part of my motto for the storm, as we brought in the various utilities and various contractors, was just bring it and bring it all, because that's what we probably needed to do, given what ultimately evolved for that Sandy event. So to ultimately answer your question, we learned a lot between Sandy and the Irene October storm. So when Sandy hit, we were probably about as prepared as we could. Prior to Sandy, days before, we had pre-staged our own OPCO affiliates from about Harrisburg toward the Delaware River in facilities and hotels. And that was both management and our union, bargaining unit crews that were there. And some were also staged in Jersey. So a lot of that pre-staging to about 1,000 people occurred prior to Sandy, and included contractors who were working on our system. Basically, they're working for us, that we basically have. We also pre-staged. So as Sandy went from east to west, and the storm passed, is when we started bringing those resources. And where we could, we tried to lodge them either at the staging locations or in motels that could accommodate them. So it became a real issue during Irene, the October storm, and Sandy to have hotel accommodations, since we were competing with some of our local customers to get rooms, but they didn't have power. So it was kind of dicey, and as a whole logistics evolution of how we're going to support ourselves so we can go around and restore our customers.
Ray, I mean, if there's any reason for why we don't have like underground power lines, is this something that's in the future planning, or?
Well, from a public policy standpoint, it's really a measure of how much money you want to spend and how much you as ratepayers are willing to pay. There are a lot of engineering issues surrounding doing underground. The first thing is we now just expanded all the flood zones. So do you want to put underground in a flood zone? Generally, from an engineering standpoint, you don't want to do that. You don't want to put saltwater electricity in the same things. It's not really a good idea. So the first point is you're going to have certain infrastructure that you probably won't choose at because of where it is. Take a look at Route 9. Notice everything is overhead. Well, one of the reasons why a lot of it is overhead is because that's where the gas lines are too.
Transmission, yeah.
Transmission. Well, there are engineering guidelines of how close they want our high voltage electricity to these gas lines. And that may be 3 feet, that might be 6 feet. Well, look at each side of the road. How much space is left? Not much. If we put in some of those transmission lines or distribution lines, some of it requires to be concrete encased. Well, your cost increases for every foot. You have to have concrete encased electric wire. So the cost becomes quite large. Space becomes a constraint in New Jersey because of competition with other utilities. I picked on gas. It could be water. It could be sewer. And how many of you are willing to go with the inconvenience of all that digging on Route 9, or Route 35, Route 34, Route 88, and all the side roads? Not to mention the permitting to get people's right-of-ways that they would have to look for compensation, because we would have to take part of the land to do this. Just the engineering, permitting, just to get the site plans together would probably take several years. So when you look at all this, from an engineering standpoint, you could probably do it if you can find the land. When you look at everything else, it would be very costly per foot in order to do that. And look at Route 9. I got transmission as well as distribution. So I'm going to have one piece of it's going to be concrete encased, and I'll probably have distribution there as well. It's physically can be done. It's very costly. So you have to make a business decision, as you all probably well know, of where is the most cost-effective place to put your dock. And right now, given some of the studies that have been done by many of the regulators, the public utilities, public utility commissions, it right now is not a really cost benefit to the consumers and the ratepayers to make that type of investment. We'll make that type of investment where it makes sense. For example, all your underground developments are all underground. All the new developments come in underground. So that's the choice now that we've got the direction of what we're going to do. But from a transmission, distribution, pipeline, we're an overhead company for a reason, because it's so dense here in Jersey, and the costly to make that transition underground just makes it very costly, and you as ratepayers may not want to see that option.
There's a continuing operating expense too, not just the initial installation.
Being there's other utilities on your lines besides power, cable, telephone, how much involved are the other utilities in getting the poles? Is that strictly the power company's domain, the actual posts themselves?
Yes, it does. In our jurisdiction, and I showed you the map of central and northern Jersey, I can't speak to all of the jurisdictions. About half the poles are telephone and half the poles are ours. And so there are various rules about what we call joint use. And we share facilities on their poles and they share facilities on our poles, of how we compensate each other. So when we do have an event, we have to identify whose pole it is. And so whoever's responsible for that pole should get out there and take care of the broken pole or the down pole or whatever the case may be. So there are relationships that we have with in this case, the other telephone carriers. The other one we have is up in the northern area in Sussex County that we have agreements with on when it's their turn or they have to go change out the poles. And then just from an operations standpoint, since Sandy, we have trialed a joint effort where Verizon will be in our operations center. So if we do identify a BT pole as being down, BT meaning Bell Telephone. We don't use Bell Telephone anymore. But it's still called the BT pole, Bell Telephone. They'll identify as quickly as possible so they can go out and fix it, which I think is a really good thing. That now we're sharing this information as quickly as possible to get those roads opening and to get those problems solved out there by either their poles or their company or our company poles.
And the one thing I'd add to that too is that I think that the companies that work together long enough that if they're going by legacy names from 20 years ago, it's dealt with on a regular basis, when there's a need to repair a pole or fix a pole or something. So the good news is that the teams work pretty closely on that.
Yeah, and just generally speaking, I started with Bell Atlantic way back, right after divestiture. So I'm my next telephone guy. And worked in some of the application support as I migrated to Bellcore and to accordion stuff. So I'm relatively familiar with the telephone sector. Of course, I have to defer not to as much of the wireless as the old circuit switch technology, but the idea is that, there's a lot of, and I think there's been a lot of mutual agreements between the companies since Sandy to work closer together to solve these problems.
All right, so that'll be it for our Q&A because we want to keep on moving along on our program because we are getting to the action part of our agenda. And this afternoon, well, first of all, round of applause for our fabulous panel that provides so much information. Thank you. Okay, so as I was saying, our goal for this afternoon's exercise is to think through the capabilities, skills, resources, and budgets we're going to need to respond to the surging sea scenarios and to understand what new opportunities these actions can create for us. So we're excited to hear about your ideas, and I'm going to turn this over to Nat Daniel.
Click it forward.
Okay, now we come to the money portion of our program. That is the show me the money. So I can see that we have had an infectious disease go through the audience, and we have lost a few. And so my suggestion is that that you regroup, as it were. So maybe that table can move to that table, and actually maybe you can share your notes together. This is the part where we find out where we can make money from the potential disaster. Okay? Now, I want you to understand this is going to be a little bit faster, or at least I hope it's going to be faster. We're going to spend about 10 minutes on each of the 4 sections.
Yeah. Like, that wasn't me.
You want to just
Poltergeist. This exercise was originally designed, does anybody know what the incident command system is? I suppose all the utility guys raise your hand, yeah, okay, and nobody else does. Okay, so the incident command system is the way your fire department, police department, ambulance service, hospitals, all security agencies, that's the way they know how to work together when they all come together, as you were hearing from the previous panels. There's this fixed structure. And one of the sections of the incident command system is the planning section. This exercise was designed originally for people to have the experience of being in the planning section. And the rule of the planning section is do not, under any circumstances, bring me problems without bringing me a solution, right? I am the incident commander, and I'm telling Ben, you do this and you do that, and you all have to learn how to play nicely together. But and I have all of this information coming in about everything that's going wrong, and I say, don't tell me what the problem is, tell me what the problem is and how you propose to fix it. And the bad news is, in a disaster, you don't have all the time in the world to think about it, right? So there is a premium on quickness and speed of the solution. Probably that means that there are going to be some wacky ideas that come out. Okay? So can I have my able assistants, there we go, able assistant, maybe I can press Debbie into service. Mr. Bill, you as well, hand out sheets with these folks. We're going to start with infrastructure again. Infrastructure, everybody gets infrastructure.
I got them all.
Now, let me help you understand the idea here. This morning, you focused on what the problems are going to be, and you have on the wall next to you your assessment of what the problems are going to be. And now, we're going to follow the time-honored principle of all consultants everywhere. I'm going to borrow your watch to tell you what time it is. Right? I'm crowdsourcing ideas today. So you see that you have, we will not be needing the Post-it notes as much in this section as we needed them in the first section. This is the thinking part and writing part, and everybody writes right on the sheet. You may do it together, or you may have assign somebody to do it. There's only 2 columns, which is deceptive with respect to the amount of brain power they need. First column says, what does adapting look like to each of the constituencies or to each of the pieces of infrastructure that you see in front of you? That was originally what does success look like, but I don't know what success looks like to a power line or to a telephone pole. So in this case, what does adapting look like? Let us assume, for example, with respect to water, the first one, that you do not have water. And I can see by looking around, I can see a lot of red Post-it notes next to water. So you don't have drinking water because it has either been infiltrated by salt water or the water has been cut off because the pipes have been broken. So all you have is contaminated water. Quick, you have 10 seconds to tell me what are you going to do to provide water to yourself, to your own business, to your customers, to your employees, to your community, right, to your family. What are you going to do? Go ahead. Hurry up.
I'm going to Walmart.
Sorry?
I'm going to Walmart.
Go to Walmart. You know, I was hoping somebody would say that, because after the West Virginia chemical spill, all I saw was pictures of trucks bringing in water from someplace that wasn't contaminated. The bad news is we're talking about all of New Jersey coastline now. right? So even Walmart, God bless them, is going to run out of water bottles, right? Water bottle doesn't solve the water problem, right? All it does is shift the responsibility to some guy who has water to bring to you. What are you going to do? Well, I got to tell you that you are going to suddenly be extremely interested in how do I clean contaminated water. And I don't mean next week, I mean right here in the house. So to the extent that it's got biological contamination and you could boil it, that would work, assuming you have either gas or power to do the boiling, right? In the disaster business in after Typhoon Haiyan, what we ended up shipping large quantities of to the Philippines were water bottles that look like your plastic water bottle, but it's a filtration bottle. And you go like this, and it cleans the water. And the demonstrations, you can look them up on YouTube. People pour dog poop and shit like that into the bottle, and then go like this, and then they drink it, right? Because it does the job. Right? Now, can you supply 3 or 4 million bottles? I suspect you can. But this is the kind of idea I'm looking for. What does winning look like to a person who wants water? Well, I need a drink. And very shortly, by the next 24 hours later, I need a bath. Right? Sanitation, right? So it's not just necessarily potable water, it's water I can use. Let's talk about electricity. You lose power to your house. Bless our friends in the power utility. You lose power to your house. I'm sorry, it's going to be 2 weeks before we get you power. What could you do? What does winning look like? It looks like I get power some other way. What other way? Very popular in the United States at the moment. Being installed everywhere. Solar, right? Solar is on your house. That is, you become your own utility, right? I don't need the power company anymore, right? You can shake your head and go, oh, that's just, I
But
can't.
they're still hooked into the grid. So if the
Yeah.
grid's not working, they're not getting power.
Yeah, the solar panels need electricity.
Depends on how it's set up.
No, by and large across the country,
Yeah.
those solar panels are hooked into the grid. If the community doesn't have power, you're not generating power for yourself, you're generating power for
Well, okay, then let me ask my friend in the uninterruptible power supply business, what could they do?
I'll tell you something. A couple of my friends, they live in a sailboat and they have a solar panel that supply power directly to them. So technically, it can be done.
No, it can be, but that's
Yeah.
just not how it generally works in America.
Most of the solar in this state is.
We are not looking for an electrical engineering debate in the next 10 minutes, right? We are looking for ideas of things we could do. They can be wacky, right? And what we're looking for once you come up with the ideas is, how could my business take advantage of that idea? This is a softball home run for the guy in the power backup business, right? I need a UPS to keep my, which is effectively a battery. I need a generator to generate my own power. I mean, there are lots of other alternatives to the power company. Are they applicable to your business? I have no idea. But if you were concerned about going down, you go, okay, fine. Fine. What about sanitation? Sewer line's broken. Toilet doesn't work. Want to know how soon that affects you? Go ahead. Don't flush the toilet for the next 24 hours and you'll find out. What's the solution? Well, you're going to be very interested in sewage recycling. You're going to be very interested in some kind of sanitary disposal method. You are going to be interested. All of a sudden you start, geez, are there toilets that don't require water? Oh yeah, right? In Singapore, if you go to a movie theater in Singapore now, the toilets, at least in the men's room, the toilets, the urinals do not require water anymore. Why? Because I live on an island and we just can't supply all the water for people to flush a gallon every time somebody pees, right? You with me? Yeah? So I'm looking for ideas, and I'm asking you to think about infrastructure first. You got 10 minutes. I want you to write down all the ideas you can think of, no matter how wacky they are, and then I want each of you to try to find one opportunity. What could my business do that would give me an opportunity to provide a service to either my employees, to my customers, to the community that makes sense for my business? I hasten to add, you may not think of one, and that's okay. On the other hand, you may also hear from someone else at the table some ideas, right? I'm going to give you 10 minutes on infrastructure, then we're going to people, then we're going to community, and I'll give you some more ideas. Is anybody unclear about this?
How about
All right, and if I were you, I'd focus on, I'd look at the notes that you made in the impact in the morning. Okay, here you go.
I wasn't clear.
One more, last one. Most important one, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, last one. Now we bring this down. Ladies. Mr. Bill, you got to fix your table. Oh, guys, quiet. Hello, hello. Now we're bringing it down to, now it gets personal. So this is everything you thought about today from your own perspective, your business perspective. And so you have the same 4 categories of business: retail, services, NGOs, and what was the last one? Manufacturing. So if you're not a manufacturer, you don't have to answer that. I want you to think about, from your business perspective, now that you know what could go wrong with the infrastructure, now that you know what people in general will want, customers, employees, family, now that you know what the community would want, what you think it will want, now, how can your business take advantage of those opportunities? What can you offer? What service could you offer? What different way of doing your business could you do that would make it possible for you to offer that business? And I hope you get the lesson from this. You won't be able to do any of this stuff if you haven't yourself thought through, how am I going to be prepared? I'm going to give you the simplest idea, and you don't need to do a thing to make it possible. If you told your regular customers, if you need a place to go to the bathroom, have a shave, or have a shower, or to wash, we let our regular customers use the bathroom that we have in the back. You think, well, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard, and maybe people don't think it's very useful. Trust me, I guarantee you, the day that they don't have water in their houses, you know what? Then we can go down to the subway, because we have a frequent buyer card, right? You don't have to believe me. Just wait until you need that bathroom. All right? So I know what I want you to go away with from today is one good idea, one plausible idea about how you could change your business, whether you're a small business or whether you're the power utility, that would make it possible to offer a service that people would need in the event of sea level rise. And I guess you can figure out by now, you just take out sea level rise and put in any other disaster, and you've got the same planning process, right? Okay? I think I got skeptics in the group, and that's okay with me, all right? You got 10 minutes. Then the last step, each one of you will have a blue pad on the table very shortly, if you don't have it. I want you to take from each of the 4 sections, infrastructure, people, community, and your business, one idea. You all have to agree on it. One idea from each of those sections, put the blue Post-it note on it. That was the best idea we had for that group. With me? Off you go. It's 2 o'clock, we're done at
He's just going to get some bits from a few different people.
Well, okay.
Debbie, are you supposed to collect the eval forms?
Well, I just wanted this, I don't have.
Roy does? Roy. Oh, here's the third.
Oh.
Would you please fill out the evaluation form if you have not already filled it out?
Point of sale, integrated point of sale. You're like point of sale or point of sale?
Where does Roy go? Is he out?
Okay, point of sale.
He'll be back? All right, this is show and tell time.
I was so good at show and tell.
As I promised, we're going to start on this side of the room and go this way around. That means this table over here with all my heroes, you're first. You're first.
We just lost our he's getting coffee.
You're announcer. The announcer, you caffeinate yourself and come back
I got my
quickly.
grandma through, so I'm kind of acting like that.
Did they steal? They stole the coffee?
All right, Gwen's gonna do it. There, go.
Oh, good, okay, great, all right, here we go. You can do it together. All right,
Together,
so
split it now. Oh, yeah.
here's the story. You gotta pay attention to show some respect to your fellow participants. All right, I don't want all 4 ideas, unless you think you can do it real quick. But would you like to, how many would you like to do?
We can do it real quick.
Okay, do it real quick. Okay, here we go. Please.
So our biggest thing was mobile communication. So our biggest thing was being able to communicate mobily, to get information down from the government and get information back up to the government and to our customers. So we were big on the community relations, communication, and then one money-making idea that we had in our opportunities was the ability for waterless bathing. Dry shampoo, dry soaps, things to keep you somehow somewhat fresh, throughout any kind of disaster. Did we miss anything? Mobile services, mobile communication, just really being able to get information out there and be able to do things on the fly as opposed to having to be concrete.
Okay. And did you think about if Verizon isn't working, how you do that?
We're screwed.
We'll be there. You hear that, Bob? I bet you don't ever hear that, right? Okay. Same thing?
That's where it goes on.
Okay, okay, we spoke about, having, businesses that are important now, and also businesses that are important when there is a disaster. And one is the strip mall, and how the strip mall,
Just didn't hear you.
and because in the mall itself, really the information booth is an outgoing with information, and we were thinking that it should be something that could be incoming. No, it's incoming information, and we think it should be outgoing information for the community. So pretty much what was old, like going to the sheriff and going into town and finding out the news, is now new again. So that was our first idea with that. Our second idea was how important transportation is, not only to some of our businesses right now that escort the elderly to and fro, but transportation itself we found was getting the masses from here to there. Not only is it an immediate problem for New Jersey right now with its antiquated transportation, that was my opinion that I just had, but to better transport people and product. We identified the buses themselves. We were talking about school buses and such, and then we spoke of the rising waters, and we were speaking on how the buses go down a level for handicapped people. Why can't OEMs invent something through hydraulics or something that would make the buses go up in case of water? So driving with a level up, and and then also our third was our point of sale. A more robust point of sale system that operates without electricity, kind of with the mindset of Square, but more integrated with inventory, customer management, and also a bonus to that would be in notifying the employees of company policy and directives and so on and so forth. You don't have to hold your applause.
Interesting how you can almost write in advance what the after-action report is going to be for almost every disaster. What's the number one thing you're going to comment on? Is communication. It is always the number one issue. The information is never soon enough or fast enough. Huh? Okay. You guys? Yeah, that's the mic. Just hold it up to your mouth.
Okay. We basically drilled down to one basic issue, though we covered lots of different topics. We're the group that said everything's important is our number one priority. Maybe because that's why we have two utility guys at the same table. I kept using the term scalability, because during a major event, it's not just talking about whether I deliver water to just one person or to 10 people. You have to worry about whole communities. You have to worry about bringing back the communities to some semblance of normalcy. And so we basically agreed that we could take a military approach, and for the opportunity is that we could have pods out there in various locations that would offer, say, sanitation, food, and some type of military arrangement. And one of our table persons here said they had designed a 3-trailer convoy system that would support the military as they did restoration effort in the Middle East and the Afghans, post-Afghan war. So there are ways that a community, either municipal, could contract out to a private sector to have these pods out there and deliver services. And maybe they could even pick which services they'd like to have there that they need, so that they would have these trailers that would go out to the various locations geographically situated to serve the most customers, so that they could come and get the services, charge their phones, do et cetera, et cetera. They had to be self-sufficient with their own generation, et cetera. So that was our answer to the big scalability question, and maybe a business opportunity. And we know there are aspects of this already out there. We know we do get generation from various folks, and we'll rent that stuff. But if someone gives us a mega answer, gives us one software, not a software solution, but one solution to serve a community, that might be a solution to get people through a particular event.
Come on.
I think this is a very good example of why the SBDC and Monmouth Ocean wanted to have different people come to this, because if I'm not mistaken, you're the utility guy, right?
I'm the power guy.
Right, exactly. And so his perspective, as you might imagine, is scalability, right? Because I'm not just serving your business, I'm serving thousands of businesses, which is entirely different than the person running the flower shop or the pharmacy or the sandwich shop, right? Which I don't care about scalability. I care about getting keeping care of my customers or my employees, right? And both perspectives have validity and are important, and somehow have to come together, right? And so I'm glad that you pointed out that perspective, because that would not be the one that I would expect from a small business owner, right? Okay. And lastly, but definitely not least, the people who use the most red Post-it notes of any group.
Are you responding to the others?
Yes, go right ahead. Step right ahead.
If you want.
If you don't want
back.
Okay, so continuing on a couple of the themes we already heard, we had with ours the issue with our infrastructure that we put the blue Post-it note on, dealt with the communication, as we can imagine, and ours was dealing with having portable hotspots and portable networks, be able to be brought into an area so that people would have a place to be able to go and stay connected when their particular area may be out. And that also ties into with the retail opportunities, as was just being mentioned as well, is bringing in those services and places to do it, whether it be through charging stations. We were talking about portable ATM machines so that you could get your cash because there's never any cash around. So things of that nature. We also, it's not written up there, but we had expanded our thoughts into the portable showers. We were talking about the Tide truck that comes in so you can do your washing and drying. But to be able to take it and to probably not just have like a single thing be there, but be able to provide all these services in a portable fashion, as we just mentioned, but we didn't mention in a military way. But it might work better. And then we had over here, we had a lot of discussion relating when it came to our community about the schools, and when the schools are closed, what the impact that has. And so we had looked at trying to have schools gear up to be able to operate also in a mobile type of fashion, whether it be that they can do the courses online, and where you have communities that are affluent enough that the kids are already all on the computers, that may not be as much of an impact, but also being able to supply to the communities that maybe are less affluent and the kids are not able to do that, to be able to provide services so that they would have that access as well, so that school is not interrupted. They don't end up having to go to school halfway into the summer, as many of them did.
And then as related to our people, we were looking at in an opportunity as well too is to be able to go into companies and create the employee assistance program, which also is almost like as we all can imagine, taking the family preparedness and putting it into a business type of plan, right? But just many times as a small business owner, we're sitting there, we're going, preparedness, what do I do? So, you know, having someone that, you know, comes in and can actually, help you put your kit together, help you get the list together for the employees. So everybody, you know, nothing causes more stress than knowing what to do when an emergency happens, so that they all know what to do.
All right. I want to wind up by taking the point about schools, because several groups talked about schools. What you wouldn't want to get into, what you wouldn't want to have to consider is starting distance learning because the school washed away or because it burned down or didn't have any power. You'd want to have started on distance learning in advance so that you weren't sitting down with your kid on the Thursday after Hurricane Sandy. No, now we're, in addition to all this other destruction around you, we're going to be I'm going to be teaching you about how to do distance learning online on your iPad. Even though you are not a school teacher or a school administrator, many of you, perhaps most of you, are parents, and you are in a position as a parent to be suggesting to the school or the principal or to the district or to vote for candidates who suggest for the principal in the district that we ought to get into distance learning. Now, I'm married to a teacher, so this is one of my issues. And I know that one of you wouldn't do this, you wouldn't want to pitch it, well, we want to be able to offer school the next time we have Hurricane Sandy. They're going to laugh you out of the room. We want to have a reason, you would want to have a reason for doing distance learning that applied every day, right? And that yes, it would be a benefit in a disaster, but we need a reason. Well, in my view, and I'm a parent, and granted they were in elementary school quite a while ago. The big issue in our school is we've got 31 kids in the class and the teacher's going nuts trying to keep track. So if you could do distance learning with, and let me just go out on a limb here, with the advanced placement kids or the track 1 kids or whatever you call them, that would reduce the density in the classroom, wouldn't it? And they would, it seems to me, be the ones most likely to be able to take advantage of the technology that provided distance learning. And it would be a small step in the direction you could, okay, if that didn't work out, and you could stop. What I'm suggesting to you is that you as a parent, you as a citizen in your school district or as a voter, you as a small business owner, even if this isn't school and education isn't your business, have some ability to look out and say, you know, this would be better on a day-to-day basis, and it would also make the school more resilient. And so the first thought is this a good idea from in the case of a school, an education perspective? And the second part is, oh, and by the way, that would make it, we would also benefit in another disaster. That was the whole point of this exercise. And if you, let me go out on a limb, how many of you got at least one good idea or idea that you think is a good idea from this workshop? Just one. Okay, and even if you didn't get one, you're raising your hand anyway, right? Because you don't want to be left out. Good. Okay, so I think from the Ocean Monmouth Business Development Group and the SBA, SBDC from U.S. Resilient, the workshop achieved its objective. If you go away thinking, okay, I want to start with what would be a way to change my business or service offerings that would benefit me from a business perspective that would also make me more resilient. And if you have that mentality, there is no way to achieve that without thinking about your own preparedness. But now you have a reason to think about your own preparedness rather than just people standing up and telling you it's a good idea. All right? So you've been absolutely a great group. I hope that you will fill out your evaluation forms and give them to Roy. Roy is going to break your leg if you do not give him the form on the way out the door.
So where are they?
Sorry.
Where is it?
In your packet. In your book, okay? And Ben, I'm your guest. You want to say farewell? Is there an official handshake or a secret? Roy up here as well. You're going to get Roy.
How about a round of applause for Roy?
Thank you, witness. We want to thank everybody that was here. Obviously, it's been a little bit of a long day, but very productive. I want to thank personally the SBDC and the U.S. Resilience Project for allowing us to partner with you on today's program. It was a pleasure to be here. I wish I could have had a little bit more of a part in it, but I guess you saw me behind the scenes cleaning up and handing out microphones and everything, so that's good. Before we let you go, very quickly, I'd like to bring up Roy Lee. Roy's going to basically tell you what's next and how you might be able to see more of this program and project a little bit in the future.
I didn't know that was what I was going to do. But no, I didn't. I didn't know that was what I was going to do. First of all, I want to thank everyone that they thank. And I want to especially thank Jacqueline and her crew. Give them a hand. When you have a great event like this, you always have people working in the background to ensure that the event works. And that's been her and her team from her center. So any of you that are in the Monmouth, Ocean area looking for small business help, you will get the same level of support from her as you did, as you see that her team gave to this particular project. I'm sure everybody is saying, I've been here all day, is this going to be the end of it? And the answer to that question is no. Our objective is to continue the conversation. We're going to have to go through a number of steps to ensure that that takes place. The first thing we have to do, this is the second of 2 workshops, we have to compile all of that information, put it together, distill it, and hopefully distill it down into a package or packages that we can either get back to participants or get back to NJSBDC centers, partners, but we have to put that information together so that we actually can get it back to you. I talked to each one of you at the table, and I told you as we develop this package, it is my hope that I can get you as a table group back together again and review it with you so that you can say, well, you know, this is something we need. It does kind of explain some of the things that we heard on the 29th. That is a hope of mine. I will refuse to let the conversation stop at this point here. I just don't believe that we can do that. We also will be meeting with the SBA in Washington in the middle of next month, telling them our plans, going through some things. The SBA is a major supporter of the NJSBDC and a supporter of the Sandy 2 program, which is what has funded all of these things here today. We will be getting back to you. You have devoted a full day and you've done outstanding with the exercises, which is giving us a lot of input that we can sit down and say, we've accomplished this, or they have seen this, this is their input, these are things that we need to take a look at, and this is something that we can build a program from. You guys have just been outstanding. So if nothing else, give yourself a hand, please. Okay, last but not least, they just keep calling me Roy, and they've said a few things about me, just in case you need to know. I'm the project manager and senior consultant in the SBDC headquarters, and the Sandy grants, as well as another grant, are grants that I manage. So I have a few cards. If I run out of cards and you want to call me, my number is 973-353-5597. 973-353-5977. And I won't give you, no. It's roy.lee@njsbdc.com. And my job is to work for small businesses. That's what they pay me to do. So if you need something, if you think I can help you, whatever it is, call me. And once again, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank Thanks, Brooke. And I guess we're ready to release you all, unless you haven't filled out your form. If you have filled out your form, you can drop it off at the desk on the way out. They'll collect it from you. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, everybody.
I'll send you an email.
I am.
Great presentation skills. Thank you for coming. You may have to, depending on where, yeah, well, the area manager.
I just want to say thank you.
Okay.
So you had the temporary worker calling all of the salespeople going, so do I go to work, do I not go to work, showing up to work, being penalized for the late. It was really, by the schools to get.
This is your road.
Talk about more sustainable, but people aren't going to buy a point of purchase system just because it adds sustainability. So it needs to give all kinds of bells and whistles at a good value.
So,
utilize
I think house calls are coming back.
I have a house
I'll put the doctor on a motorcycle and get him.
Filter your water.
So is this something that's going to be going on continuously, the rain?
And who lives in the boat? They have something that's
So sell, yeah, I put down desalinization kits, even if they're for a house or small business.
I'm sure that there are